Chapter 382. A strange aura, accompanied by heat waves, reverberated in this spacious space wave by wave. That fire dragon bared its fangs and brandished its claws, its face ferocious, but it did not continue to expand, as if this was its limit. Even so, under the blazing flames, even the hard ground began to show signs of cracking. On the contrary, the seemingly shabby and crude brazier was safe and sound. The fire blazed, reflected in the beast deity's eyes, as if his eyes were also burning. At the other end of the fire, that woman's voice laughed faintly, said, "Your powers are really exhausted, or are you deliberately lying to me? Although this formation is not activated by the Inferno Mirror, and was damaged when you were resurrected, but its power is definitely not limited to this." The beast deity's handsome face did not change, calmly said, "Since you are so wary of me, I don't really understand. Why did you insist on coming to save me?" That lady humphed, said, "Haven't I told you before? Firstly, I am here because of this strange formation passed down by the ancient shaman tribe. Another reason is that Funxiang Valley's pretentious old man Yun is an eyesore." The beast deity smiled, as if he did not take the woman's words to heart, said, "Although Yun Elon went back on his word, but to be honest, I have never really believed him. If I had won that battle at Qin Yun Hill, he would definitely not dare to do this. Adding insult to injury, isn't that what most people do?" That woman said, "Unfortunately, he still does not know you and I are different. You cannot be killed." The beast deity's eyes were deep, slowly staring at the darkness behind the fire, the blazing fire, but it seemed like it could not shine into that place. "And how do you know I cannot be killed? If I tell you now I can already be killed, what would you think?" He stared at the darkness, a faint smile on his lips, as if it was provocative, and also tempting, slowly said. That woman suddenly did not speak. In the entire cave, there seemed to be only the sound of the burning fire, but for some reason, it seemed even more deathly silent than before. After some time, the beast deity suddenly said, "How many years has it been since we've known each other?" After a long time, the woman said indifferently, "I can't remember. All those years ago, I accidentally came here not long after I attained the Tao. Now that I speak of it, why did you look at me differently at that time?" The beast deity smiled and slowly lowered his head. The weariness on his face seemed to deepen. "Although I was not human at that time, I could not stand loneliness." The woman was silent for a while, as if she was a little surprised. After a while, she said, "Why do you look a little different today? You never used to say things like that." The beast deity's shoulders trembled, and he let out 2 violent coughs. However, he still had a faint smile on his face. It was as if he didn't care about anything. "Have you seen a dying person before? Can he still look normal?" The woman said almost immediately, "But you're not human." "How do you know I'm not human?" The flames in the brazier suddenly rose, like a silent roar of a fire dragon. Then it slowly fell down. The 8 mysterious ferocious drawings also slowly fell down. The light dimmed and gradually disappeared into the darkness. The fire dragon gradually melted into the flames and turned into an ordinary fire. The surroundings dimmed, and only the brazier had some light. "What did you do to yourself?" After a long time, the woman asked softly. The beast deity did not answer and did not speak. He looked more and more tired. He slowly raised his hand. In the fire, the skin on his right wrist seemed to have lost its luster. Indistinctly, there was a dark red energy channel hidden in the muscles of his wrist. The beast deity looked at that energy channel for a while and shook his head. He gently made a cut on his wrist. After a while, a cut slowly appeared and a drop of blood flowed out. Fresh blood. Red fresh blood. How can it be? The woman in the darkness was too shocked. She couldn't even continue. After a long time, she seemed to regain her senses. Stunned, she said, You actually became human." The beast deity did not speak. He only smiled. That silent smile, no one knew if it was a bitter smile or a gratified smile. No wonder I have always been puzzled. You were born from heaven and earth's evil energy. You should be an immortal being. How could you suffer such a serious injury under the Zhu Xian sword at Qing Yun Hill? So it turns out that you have become the person you have always hated at some point in time? Ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. The woman did not know if it was because she felt it was too absurd or because she could not control herself. She laughed out loud. The beast deity's eyes stared at the drop of red blood on his wrist. His eyes flashed with an indescribable complex emotion. Like joy, like sorrow. I have never hated anyone. He tiredly smiled. I can come to this world and have my consciousness. Isn't it also human? The woman was stunned. What did you say? The beast deity slowly looked up at the burning flames in the brazier. His voice, in this place where darkness and light alternated, seemed to return to the long years of the past. The first time I was conscious, she was the one I saw. At that time I did not even have a body. In a trance, that woman seemed to be watching me. Just that as time passed, I gradually formed and finally knew that she was a human. She was the shaman woman of that generation. Her name was Linglong. The Taotai beside the beast deity made a low growl. The beast deity stretched out his hand and stroked its head. The Taotai quietened down. That woman did not make a sound. She seemed to know that a secret that had been covered in dust for countless years was about to be revealed. In the beast deity's eyes, gentleness slowly occupied the entire place. His eyes also looked into the distant darkness, far away in the cave. Over there, maybe there was a soul that was once there, quietly listening. It was Linglong who used witchcraft to absorb the heaven and earth evil energy in the southern border and extracted the essence from it to create me. The beast deity faintly said. This secret that had puzzled for thousands of years, no one knew of his origins. Those so-called heroes of the shaman tribe followed Linglong to put me to death. If they knew that I was created by their respected goddess, I really don't know how they would feel. He smiled faintly. It was as if all the killing and viciousness in the past had never existed on him. At this moment, all he had was just a memory. I had asked Linglong many times why she created me, but she was never willing to tell me. But later on, I finally understood that she was just doing it for one word. The woman could not help but asked, "What?" The beast deity faintly said, "Longevity." The woman was slightly surprised. "Longevity?" The beast deity nodded and said, "That's right. You also find it ridiculous?" But that day she did it for this purpose. At that time, Linglong's attainment in witchcraft had already far surpassed the ancients. In the entire world, she was almost invincible, and in the shaman tribe, everyone revered her like a god. Out of boredom, what she did was to find another target for herself. This sounded similar to the people in the Central Plains. But the mystery of longevity was originally the heavenly Tao. Although she was an exceptionally intelligent woman, she could not decipher it. Finally, one day, she thought of an inhuman way. Inhuman, there is a limit to a person's lifespan. Even if one is successful in cultivation, he can only live for a few hundred more years. But inhuman beings usually have longer lifespans, and since the creation of heaven and earth, the evil energy of yin and yang, they are eternal. Since she thought of this, she studied it carefully. Finally, she created me from the lifeless world. She is really amazing, the woman said faintly. Hee. The beast deity smiled faintly and said, "Yes, she is really an amazing woman. Ever since I came to this world, the first person I saw when I woke up was her. I don't know how many years have passed, but she was the only one in my world. Slowly I started to take shape. Because my original body was born from the evil energy of heaven and earth, since I had a divine sense, I naturally started to absorb the evil energy around me and gradually became stronger. But she seemed to be a little uneasy. The way she looked at me was no longer so friendly. When my power finally started to be able to compete with hers, From that day onwards, she never smiled at me again. I was very confused then. I did not know why. Actually, I also did not know why my power grew so quickly. But to me, what was the point of power? I just wanted to be with her, to be with her. You can tell her, won't she know? The woman could not help but say. I said it many times. Now that I think about it, it's probably like a child acting like a spoiled child to his mother. The beast deity smiled faintly, but it disappeared again. But she never believed me. The woman was silent for a long time. The beast deity was also silent, as if immersed in his memories. The flame was still burning in the brazier. It trembled slightly in midair, as if it was panting. Time seemed to have stopped in her tracks in this dark place. She tilted her head and listened. Chapter 383. The years of the past were like frozen memories. They melted bit by bit before slowly disappearing. Who could reverse it? Was it you or me? Or were we all just people who were panting and running in time, unable to catch up with time, gradually growing old and disappearing into the shadows? Finally, there came a day when I didn't want to stay in that room with only her. I wanted to go out and take a look. That day, she left for a long time and didn't return. I broke the restriction she placed on me, opened the door to her room, and walked out. There were many, many, many people. But when they saw me, they all screamed in fear and ran for their lives. I don't know why, but at first, I was very panicked, then angry, and finally, I felt a wave of hostility rush up from my heart. It was also at this moment that a dozen warriors who heard the news started to attack me. I parried and retreated at the same time. I didn't want to fight them. I regret it. I just want to be with my Linglong. I just wanted to come out and take a look. I spoke with all my might, I explained with all my might, but no one listened until I killed the first person by mistake. There was a long silence. That young soldier hung down in my hands. His head slowly drooped down. Fresh blood flowed out of his body. I was stunned, and so were the others. Then, they rushed over even more ferociously. Amidst their curses, I could clearly hear cries in the distance. It was that warrior's family crying. I don't know, but from the first time I saw the blood, my body had already changed. That desire to kill was like a madman coiling around me. I didn't want to kill, but I couldn't control it. So I took action. I killed. I killed many people, many, many people. The beast god lowered his head, but his voice continued. I stood in the pool of blood. I don't know how long I stood there, but I slowly woke up. Then, I saw in the distance, surrounded by countless people, Linglong had returned. She stared at me without blinking her eyes. Her face was pale beyond belief. I don't know why, but I was very afraid. I felt that I was really in the wrong, but I really didn't know what I did wrong. Then, Linglong made her move. She personally attacked me. I would not strike back. I wished to explain to her, I wished to tell her that I would never dare to come out again, and that I would be content to stay in that room and be with her alone from then on. I've said these words countless times, but she didn't listen even once. Her magic wasn't something that those ordinary warriors could compare with. Soon, my body was riddled with holes, but every time these wounds were injured, they would absorb the evil energy in the surroundings to recover. Even I could feel that every time Linglong hit me, my power would grow a little bit faster. In the end, Linglong also realized this. Her face turned ashen, as if she had given up all hope. The beast deity was still smiling as he reminisced, but there was a hint of pain on his face. I slowly began to feel that Linglong really hated me. She used all kinds of sorcery on me like a madman. Although my body was indestructible, my heart was really in pain. So, in the end, I ran away on my own. And on the way, everyone I met was scared out of their wit. It was only later that I realized that I looked really scary in the eyes of those ordinary people. He gently patted the evil beast Tautai lying beside him and said, I looked even uglier than it at that time. After leaving Linglong, I escaped into the 100,000 Great Mountains. Not long after, I found this cave and temporarily stayed here. But I wanted to go back. I wholeheartedly wanted to be with Linglong. So, I finally went back, but what welcomed me was this formation. The flames in the brazier made crackling sounds, as if responding to the beast god's words. I never thought that there would be such a terrifying power in this world. Linglong used the power of the Inferno Mirror to set up the 8 Savage Inferno formation and summoned the 8 Wilderness Fire Dragon. Under the blazing flames that could burn everything in the world, even though I had an immortal body, I was still badly injured and my body was destroyed. I desperately told Linglong that I didn't want to do anything else. I just wanted to be with her. But she didn't seem to listen to me at all. She wanted to burn me to death. In the end, I ran away and escaped back to this cave. I don't know why Linglong treated me like this, but I couldn't accept it. I really wanted to be with her. After returning here, with the help of the 100,000 Great Mountains' unique heaven and earth vicious energy, I recovered very quickly. Just when I planned to secretly look for her again, she actually chased after me. She brought 7 so-called warriors and chased me to this ancient cave. She personally came in and found me. I wasn't surprised, because I was created by her. If there was anyone in the world who could deal with me and understand me, who else could it be other than her? But I really didn't understand. Why did she treat me like this? I said so many things to her. Why did she not listen at all? But this time, Linglong actually answered me. She said that it was all her fault. Creating a monster like me was a grave mistake on her part. Because I was born of the heaven and earth vicious energy. I was born with the desire to kill. If I was allowed to live in this world, I'm afraid the common people would suffer. I desperately explained to her that I wouldn't. I only wanted to be with her. I didn't want anything else. But she only smiled bitterly and said that she believed in me. In fact, she was willing to be with me. But what if she died? In the ancient cave, far away, there seemed to be someone sighing in the darkness. Because of that scene thousands of years ago, the tears that fell, did anyone still remember? I was dumbfounded and my mind went blank. I knew that I was immortal, but I never thought that Linglong would die. I could still remember it clearly. Linglong's pale smile had tears rolling down her cheeks. Then, she activated the 8 Fiends' mysterious flame formation again. She trapped me inside and burned my body again. But she couldn't destroy the vicious energy essence that I had turned into. After the formation, her vitality was greatly damaged. But I was created by her. In the flames, I still asked her, "Why did you do this to me?" This time, she didn't say anything. She placed the formation in this ancient cave to restrict me. She burned it day and night. As long as my vicious energy recovered, the flames would burn it away. In the end, she looked at me in a daze. She suddenly asked me, "What other wishes do I have?" The beast deity chuckled. "Wish? What wish can I have? All I wanted was to be with her." So I asked her, "Why can't I be with her?" Linglong lowered her head. She slowly said, "Because I am not human. I am not even a living creature. It is fated that we cannot be together." In the raging flames, I faced her and said, "Then you, let me be a human." His voice suddenly rose. He raised his head and shouted towards the ceiling of the cave. "Let me be a human." Rumble. The walls shook. Rocks fell. The sound was like a drum. It was deafening. In the flying dust, the beast god slowly lowered his head. "What happened after that?" the woman in the darkness asked. She seemed to be stunned. After a long time, she didn't move. I endured the pain of being burned by the flames. All my hopes turned to dust. But she suddenly stood up. She stopped the formation and walked to my side. I looked at her blankly. I didn't know what she wanted to do. She said to me in a low voice that she had let me down. Then she... At this point, the beast god's voice suddenly started to tremble. She started to chant a long and tedious spell, slowly pulled out the knife, and then started to cut herself, one slash at a time. "What? the woman in the darkness exclaimed. I was also stunned. No, I was scared silly. I was really stunned. I didn't know what she was doing. Slowly, Linglong used her own flesh and blood. She even used her own bones to build a skeleton on the ground. Then, she placed me on the skeleton. As her incantation became more and more urgent, I gradually melted into the body. Even my consciousness started to fade. I heard her voice getting softer and softer. But she was still telling me that this was the last thing she could do for me. In the future, as long as someone found the 5 divine instruments and placed them on the skeleton, I would be able to come back to life. But after I came back to life, although my demonic powers would still be there, my body would be that of a human. Since I was a human, I would no longer be immortal. She said that she was wholeheartedly pursuing immortality and offended the heavenly Tao. She created a monster like me and had an indecent relationship with me, which made her even more wrong. Also, because of me, she killed countless lives and brought calamity upon the world. She killed me with her own hands, but she didn't say anything else. My consciousness was slowly fading away. In my days, I heard her last words, I'll always be with you. I have never understood this sentence. Until I, after thousands of years, came back to life. I stood at the entrance of the ancient cave. That statue, which was battered by wind, frost, rain, and snow, tempered by the sun and the moon, still gazed deeply into the depths of the ancient cave. I hugged her. I understood. Chapter 384. Light footsteps could be heard in the dark cave. A faint green light flickered in front of them. After the light, Ghostly and Jean Pinger appeared. The two of them had already entered very deep into the subdued devil ancient cave, but this strange cave seemed to have no end. The dark and damp path twisted and turned, as if endlessly extending forward. The light from the soul-devouring stick could only illuminate at most 6 chi in front of them, and the surrounding further was that silent deep darkness. Among them, there seemed to be mysterious eyes, staring at the two intruders. Jean Pinger walked not far behind Ghostly. For some reason, she slowly felt herself starting to feel nervous. At the end of this path, nobody knew where it was, and what would be there, waiting for them. Even if she saw a ferocious evil beast, most likely it would not waver her determination. However, this void of darkness, instead made her agitated. Ghostly's footsteps suddenly stopped. Jean Pinger's heart jumped, almost bumped into his back, quickly stopped her body, at the same time on full alert, secretly looked around, lowered her voice and said, "Why, did you discover something?" Ghostly turned his head and looked at her. Under the faint green light, Jean Pinger's skin looked bewitchingly beautiful. He was silent for a moment, said, "Your breathing sounds a little messed up." Jean Pinger was stunned for a moment, frowned and then slowly straightened her body, snorted coldly. Ghostly looked at her and did not say anything. He turned around and continued to walk forward. After a few steps, he heard the girl behind him take a deep breath. A moment later, she caught up with him again. Her body and breathing had already calmed down. Looking from behind, that man's back was reflected in Jean Pinger's eyes, solid, steady. For some reason, Jean Pinger found herself at ease. Just that on his shoulder, that monkey at the moment shrunk its head, looked listless, only that long tail drooped down, swaying back and forth with Ghostly's steps. The green light emitted from the soul-devouring stick in Ghostly's hand, in the darkness, seemed especially gentle. The sinister orb's murderous evil power, right now seemed to have disappeared. The light swept across the stone walls, illuminating everything before it slowly returned to darkness. Jean Pinger looked around silently. After entering the subduing devil ancient cave, the unique wind here was bone-chilling, almost able to freeze one's blood into ice cubes. But as they went deeper and deeper into the ancient cave, not only did the wind not become stronger, but it also gradually weakened. At this moment, they could no longer feel the existence of the wind. Without the sound of the wind, their surroundings were dead silent. Looking at the places that were illuminated by the light, Jean Pinger's brows furrowed even tighter. When she first entered the ancient cave, Jean Pinger did not notice the surrounding stone walls, but after going deeper, Jean Pinger instead discovered that in the depths of the legendary subdued Devil Ancient Cave, there were more and more traces of man-made construction. On the surrounding stone walls, although it had been a long time, but the flatness was not something that could be formed naturally. Even the path under their feet, although it was full of twists and turns, there were few ups and downs. Moving forward, it was not as difficult as they had expected. And in this cave, there was not the slightest bit of the stench of an evil demon, and there were no terrifying human or beast skeletons on the ground. This subduing Devil Ancient Cave seemed to be a clean and quiet place, not like the residence of the world's #1 demon. Just like that, they turned another corner. That darkness suddenly thickened, like an invisible wall, in an instant lay in front of them. The light emitted by the soul-devouring stick, at the moment the two of them turned around, was reflected back by the invisible wall. Almost at the same time, Ghostly and Jean Pinger's bodies paused, and then swiftly floated backwards. Rumble! With a muffled sound, 2 large holes were blasted open where they were standing. Broken stones flew everywhere, hitting the surrounding stone walls and making loud banging sounds. That darkness seemed to roar like an avalanche, charged past the corner, pouncing towards them. Ghostly and Jean Pinger until now still could not tell what kind of monster it was. Jean Pinger's face turned slightly pale, her body moved slightly, she had already flashed Tenjong behind. In that strong wind, suddenly green light flourished, Ghostly's entire body was shrouded by the green halo, standing below that seemingly endless darkness, coldly staring at that black wall, even the monkey Xiao Hui on his shoulder, 3 eyes also lit up at the same time, flashing a faint golden color. That black veil came crashing down, the sound of the wind was strong, even the stones on the ground were once again shot up, but in this darkness, Ghostly's figure stood still, the green light did not dim and instead grew stronger. A strong light exploded from his right hand, in an instant, his palm had already stretched out, piercing into the darkness. The strong green light that was circling around Ghostly's right hand, the moment he pierced into the darkness, suddenly disappeared, as if it was blocked by something, but the next moment, a loud sound was heard, that black veil emitted sounds, the next moment, 7 holes were forcefully torn open, from within, dazzling green light shone out. Roar! A painful roar suddenly erupted from the front. The mountain-like black curtain suddenly dispersed, and it was still pitch black. However, in the depths of the darkness, 2 large red eyes appeared. The soul-devouring stick in Ghostly's hand gave out an increasingly strong light. With the help of this light, Ghostly and Jean Pinger, who was standing behind, could see clearly. The one guarding this place was actually an enormous black bat. Its entire body was black, only its 2 eyes were blood red. Most likely the huge body and bat wings had blocked its eyes. That was why they were unable to see the true body of this evil creature, but most likely this kind of evil creature's usual attack was like this, suddenly attacking in the darkness. It was indeed easy to panic, not knowing how to deal with it. Right now on that black bat's bat wings, Ghostly had 7 wounds, strange light blue blood spilled on its body, obviously it was not light. But this kind of evil creature was never timid. Instead it seemed to be enraged, opened its huge mouth and bellowed. The bat wings spread out, although it was not stable, but the darkness flourished again, swept over. A cold glint flashed in Ghostly's eyes, the sinister orb at the tip of the stick shone with evil light at the same time. The bat was about to pounce. Suddenly a whistling sound was heard from Ghostly's shoulder, a grey figure flashed past. It was Xiao Hui who had jumped out from his shoulder, charging towards that evil creature which was several times bigger than the monkey. Ghostly frowned. Even Jean Pinger, who was standing behind, was also stunned. Looking over, the difference between the 2 animals in the air was really too big. Unexpectedly, just as Jean Pinger was thinking about this and was even slightly worried for that monkey, in the green light, Xiao Hui's figure was continuously growing bigger. In just a short time, It had already turned from a less than 3-chi gray little monkey into a 3-eyed monkey that almost filled the entire cave, howling furiously, 3 blood-red eyes 3-eyed monkey. The two enormous beasts in the air collided with a loud bang. The surrounding stone walls seemed unable to withstand such a huge impact, started to shake violently. Jean Pinger even felt that the ground under her feet started to shake. Instead, Ghostly, who was standing not far away from the two beasts, his face slowly regained his composure, a faint smile on his lips, completely disregarding the falling stones like rain, the murderous aura in his eyes. The huge black bat was clearly startled by the sudden appearance of the huge ape, but it still ferociously pounced over, just that the gray huge figure swept past. Xiao Hui with extreme agility flashed in between the bat's claws, both of its huge palms grabbed forward, grabbed the base of the bat's wings near its body. The demon bat let out a shrill scream, as if it felt fear for the first time. However, the 3 red eyes in front of it were even scarier than it. Sharp fangs flashed in the darkness, and then it raised its head to the sky and let out a long cry. That howl was like a tidal wave, rumbled in this cave with unstoppable force, as if it was facing this world's living beings, unyielding and unyielding provocation. Under the flickering of the black and green lights, savagery and anger alternated. The huge ape howled, its huge arms waved, like a demon laughing and dancing. Chapter 385. C. Blue blood splashed everywhere. The huge black demon bat was torn into 2 halves by the 3-eyed spirit monkey and thrown far away. Far away, that long cry reverberated, layers upon layers, unceasingly. The might of one rage, to such an extent. The huge ape slowly turned around, looked down. That man was still standing at the same spot, looking at it. The red light in its eyes slowly disappeared. Suddenly, it stretched out its hand and scratched its head, grinned, its body swiftly shrunk, very quickly returned to its original size, turned into Xiao Hui. It crouched on the ground, turned its head, looked at its master, its right hand occasionally stroked its head, the long tail behind it gently swaying. Ghostly looked at Xiao Hui, a warm smile slowly appeared in his eyes. Only facing this monkey, he could smile wholeheartedly. He smiled and stretched out his hand. Xiao Hui called out a few times, both its legs bounced and in a few steps, scurried up to Ghostly's shoulder, crouched down, grinned incessantly, looking very happy. Ghostly thought for a while and stretched out his hand to pick up Xiao Hui, hugged it with both hands and brought it in front of him, carefully looked it up and down. The gray monkey's 3 eyes blinked together, not knowing what Ghostly wanted to do. Jean Pinger also slowly walked up, stood beside, looked at Ghostly, her face deep in thought, not knowing what she was thinking. Ghostly looked at Xiao Hui for a moment, nodded his head, placed it back on his shoulder, and then stroked its head, suddenly smiled and said, "After we go out, I will buy wine for you to drink." Jean Pinger was lost in thought. The words suddenly entered her ears. For a moment she did not react, her mouth opened in shock, her mind was blank for a moment. On the contrary, the monkey was stunned for a moment and then became overjoyed. Vizia laughed incessantly, bared its fangs and brandished its claws on Ghostly's shoulder. After a moment, it seemed to suddenly come to its senses, took off the big empty wine bag that it had been carrying on its back for a long time, without even looking, threw it hard on the ground, making a pa sound. Dust flew up high. Ghostly smiled and walked forward, gradually merging into the darkness. But under the green light, his figure was so distinct in the darkness, and that gray-furred monkey's joyful figure was also so harmonious with him, as if they were one, inseparable. Jean Pinger slowly took a few steps forward. Looking at the figure of the man and the monkey, she couldn't help but feel a chill. Just that unknowingly, the surroundings lost the illumination of Ghostly's soul-devouring green light and gradually darkened. Jean Pinger reacted, stretched out her right hand, the purple light lit up and once again illuminated the surroundings. She composed herself and was about to quicken her steps to catch up with Ghostly when suddenly a black figure moved in the darkness ahead, scurrying towards her. Jean Pinger was startled and quickly prepared herself, but unexpectedly that figure came near, and under the purple light, it was actually the monkey Xiao Hui. Jean Pinger frowned, but in her heart she heaved a sigh of relief, just that she did not know why this extremely strange yet extremely powerful monkey, like its master, suddenly ran back. Xiao Hui jumped in front of Jean Pinger and looked around. Suddenly an angry expression appeared on its face and loudly growled at Jean Pinger. Jean Pinger was surprised, spread out her hands and asked in surprise, "What are you doing?" Xiao Hui's 3 eyes stared at Jean Pinger at the same time. Jean Pinger was an exceptional beauty, but obviously this beauty had no effect on the monkey. Xiao Hui, with an annoyed look, angrily pointed at its feet. Jean Pinger looked down, with a sound, stepped back and coincidentally stepped on the big wine bag that Xiao Hui had thrown away. Xiao Hui was indignant and picked up the wine bag again. Using its hand to pat off the dust, it actually hung the wine bag on its body again. Jean Pinger was both angry and amused, angrily said, "Hey, damn monkey, that was thrown away by you yourself. Why are you so fierce to me?" Xiao Hui made 2 strange sounds at Jean Pinger, grimaced, and then with it scurried back and in a blink disappeared into the darkness ahead, obviously chasing after Ghostly. Jean Pinger was stunned for a moment, eventually shook her head with a bitter smile and followed. Deep inside the subdued devil ancient cave, the fire in the brazier was still burning in loneliness. The dusty past seemed to reverberate softly in this quiet cave. The beast deity and that mysterious girl in the darkness did not speak, they were both silent, as if still immersed in that unbearable past. Even the Taotai beside was lying on the ground tiredly, seemed to have fallen asleep. But in this silence, suddenly, the Taotai seemed to be startled by something, abruptly lifted its head from between its claws, its huge bell-like eyes stared at the distant exit, an ear-piercing roar coming from its mouth, carrying a trace of uneasiness. The beast deity slowly opened his eyes, frowned slightly, and in the darkness, that girl seemed to have also made a sound. That indistinct long roar, although had already become weak, but it was still like a wild beast charging over from afar, unscrupulously breaking the silence, arrived with a loud rumble. "Someone is coming," the beast deity indifferently said. That girl in the darkness was silent for a moment, suddenly sneered and said, "Someone actually managed to find their way here. Most likely it is that old man Yin Elon who sent people over to die, and at the same time to test your strength." The beast deity still looked as tired as ever, as if he didn't care about anything at all. He said, "Whatever, I can't be bothered to care about it. But how did these people manage to go so deep into the cave? From the sounds, it seems like they've already gone past where Black Bat is. But to be able to enter this cave, most likely they can deal with the Black Bat, just that there is still a black tiger spirit at the cave entrance. They actually managed to enter without a sound. The black tiger also did not make any movements. It is not simple." The female voice in the darkness suddenly said, "Since you're no longer an undying and indestructible body, with your current injuries, can you deal with these enemies of unknown strength?" The beast deity smiled and said, "I don't know, but I am not worried." That girl said, "Why?" The beast god smiled. "With you around, what do I have to fear?" The woman's voice was silent for a moment before she sneered, "What does your death have to do with me? Don't think that I'll help you again just because I helped you once. With your level of cultivation, although I have some friendship with you, it's hard to say when you will turn against me in the future. It's better for you to die earlier." The beast deity coughed twice, his face still showing some pain, but the smile on his lips did not diminish. He only looked into the darkness and said, "I will die sooner or later, don't worry. But before that, don't you want to comprehend the 8 savage inferno formation passed down by the sorcerer tribe? If I die, won't you lose everything?" The woman snorted and said, "The formation is right here, why would I be afraid of you?" The beast deity smiled and said, "The 8 savage inferno spell formation diagram that has been passed down in the world until now is only here and Fenxiang Valley Inferno altar. Funxiang Valley's diagram has already been destroyed, only this place is left. You have yet to comprehend the mysteries of the formation, only I can activate the formation for you to comprehend. If you have the Inferno Mirror in your hands, you will naturally be able to activate the formation, a pity you don't have it. Speaking till here, he paused, a faint melancholy flashed across his face and said, Now you also know, this formation was set up by Linglong to restrain me. If I die, this formation will also be destroyed. In that case, you won't get anything? The woman was silent. After a long while she said, You are ruthless. I will deal with these people. The beast deity slowly shook his head and said, It's not that I am ruthless, it's because you have concerns, that's why you are controlled by others. But he slowly lifted his eyes and looked into the darkness, said, Can you tell me, for whom exactly, must you take the risk to be with me, to comprehend this formation? There was no answer, the surroundings were silent, as if in that moment, the mysterious woman in the darkness had already gone far away. The fire in the brazier was still burning, reflected in the beast deity's eyes. The Taotai slowly stood up, continuously making low growls, looking very uneasy. The beast deity silently looked into the darkness ahead, in silence. Chapter 386. Central Plains, 20 miles outside of Heyang City. The sky gradually darkened, the pedestrians on the ancient path also gradually disappeared. It was a time of chaos, demons were rampant, although they were at the foot of the good faction's Qing Yun sect mountain, but no one could say for sure if they would suddenly meet any demons or ghosts. Everyone only had one life, even the common people cherished their own lives, not to mention that the demon-beast catastrophe had just passed. The people who had survived, naturally cherished themselves even more. Just that, there were still a few figures, walking conspicuously on the road, an old man at the front, with a celestial demeanor, holding a bamboo pole, on it hung an old cloth, written on it, Immortal Guide, 4 words. Behind him followed a man and a woman, the man with a headscarf covering his face, the woman delicate and cute, although the sky was dark, but she still seemed to be concentrating on a black wordless book in her hands. This was naturally Tanis Ka, Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist. Along the way they dragged their feet. Zhou Yisian would occasionally find a passerby to pull aside, beaming with joy and talk nonsense. Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist naturally could not stand it, just that those who were pulled for fortune-telling were really like what Zhou Yisian said before. After being told by him, all of them were greatly energized. After paying, they seemed to be reignited and happily left. In the end, Zhou Yisian earned his fill of money. Xiao Huan was too lazy to care about him, she only cared about reading. In this period of time, Xiao Huan became more and more fascinated by the book that Mr. Ghost left behind. Not only would she read it when she was resting, even when she was walking, she would not let go of the book. Right now the sky was already dark, but she did not seem to notice it, still fully immersed in the book. Wild Dog Taoist called out to Tanis Ka, said, Senior, it seems like we will not be able to reach Heyang City today. If we cannot find the family, I'm afraid we will have to spend the night in the wilderness. Tanis Ka looked at the sky, nodded his head, then looked around, but only saw darkness, not to mention that there were no people living in this wilderness, not even a dilapidated temple or a dilapidated house could be seen. Tanis Ka coughed, saw Wild Dog Taoist was looking at him. His granddaughter Tani did not have any reaction, still following behind Wild Dog Taoist, focused on reading that black ghost book. Tanis Ka had always felt that it was inappropriate for his granddaughter to read this book of Ghost Tao, but he could not tell what was wrong. Every time he talked about how cruel and evil Ghost Tao was, Xiao Huan would use one sentence to dismiss him. This demonic technique has a lot of ways to save people. It's much stronger than your physiognomy. Every time Tanis Ka heard this, he would be speechless, but he was thick-skinned enough and refused to admit defeat, but he could not continue to ask Xiao Huan to throw away the Ghost Tao. No matter what, Great Immortal Zhou found Xiao Huan's book to be an eyesore. He shouted angrily, Xiao Huan, Why are you still reading that damn book at a time like this? Xiao Huan then raised her head from the book, looked at Tannis-Ka, impatiently said, Grandpa, we are walking so slowly, not because I am reading the book, it's because you are scamming people by fortune-telling, that's why we are walking so slowly. Tannis-Ka choked, blushed, coughed twice, turned his head, laughed dryly and said, forget it, let's not talk about this, I mean, we have no place to stay now, we have to think of a way. Wild Dog Taoist shook his head, said, we really can't find a place to stay, Senior, you are more familiar with this place than us, think if there are any dilapidated temples nearby so we can spend the night. Tannis-Ka snorted, sneered and said, how do you know I am more familiar with this place, although I was born in Hyang City, but I have always been wandering the world, when would I be familiar with this place? Suddenly, he seemed to be deep in thought and stopped halfway through his sentence. Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist were puzzled. Xiao Huan said, Grandpa, what are you trying to say? Tannis-Ka frowned, seemed to recall something but could not be sure. He slowly turned and looked ahead, seemed to be trying hard to recall something. That? Seems like I really remember, not far ahead there is a fork road, enter from that small path, although it is a little far but there is indeed a house there. Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist became happy. Xiao Huan smiled and said, really, then what are we waiting for, let's go. Tannis-Ka for some reason, seemed hesitant, his brows kept frowning, trying hard to recall something, said, but I keep feeling something is not right, it has been too long, I can only vaguely remember there is a house in this direction outside Hyang City, but that house does not seem to be a good place. But what exactly it is, I can't remember. Xiao Huan rolled her eyes at him, walked ahead and ignored him, she said. All right, let's go quickly, at least we have a house, it doesn't matter how broken it is, at least it's better than sleeping outdoors. Xiao Huan left first, Wild Dog Taoist naturally followed. Tannis-Ka walked at the back, involuntarily followed, but kept patting his head, frowning tightly. His mouth mumbling, said, what exactly is the house, why can't I remember? After walking for a distance, the sky had completely darkened, but with the help of the few weak stars, the three of them indeed found an almost hidden small path, leading deep into the wilderness. Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist nodded, walked towards that small path. Wild Dog Taoist even hastened his steps, walking ahead of Xiao Huan, at the same time vigilantly looking around. Only Tannis-Ka was still following at the back, his mouth occasionally muttering with some grumbling, seemed like he still could not remember the origin of that house in his memory and what it was used for. This small path was actually very long. The three of them walked for almost an hour and still did not see any signs of a house. Xiao Huan started to suspect, turned and said to Tannis-Ka, Grandpa, you really did not remember wrongly? Tannis-Ka was glanced at by Xiao Huan, unconsciously felt guilty, laughed dryly and said, This, you know people are getting older, sometimes it is hard to avoid remembering things wrongly, but I really remember that there is a house on this road, just that what the house was used for, I can't remember for the moment. Besides, after so many years, it is not impossible that the house was demolished, even if no one demolished it. The wind, frost, rain and snow most likely collapsed. Xiao Huan for a moment could not speak, shook her head, turned around. Suddenly Wild Dog Taoist stopped, turned back and shouted, You all quickly come, the house is here. Xiao Huan and Tannis-Ka were surprised. Tannis-Ka was overjoyed, laughed loudly and said, Aha, old man, I said, with this immortal's intelligence, how can I not remember there is a house here? How can I remember wrongly? Xiao Huan ignored him, quickly walked to Wild Dog Taoist, looked ahead, saw at the end of the small path, there was a house. The area was not small, but looking from afar, the courtyard was barren, the walls damaged, there was no sign of human presence, obviously it had been abandoned for many years. Tannis-Ka slowly walked over, shaking his head, his mouth made clicking sounds, seemed to be praising himself. Xiao Huan rolled her eyes at him, said, Let's go quickly, Grandpa. After speaking, the three of them walked towards the house. The night breeze blew over, the wilderness was slightly cold, the three of them shrunk their necks. Walking nearer, they could see more clearly. This was really a dilapidated house. Where the walls used to be were collapsed, broken. Even the courtyard door was left with an extremely dilapidated door frame. Even the door planks were gone. As for the courtyard, there was only one house. The roof seemed to be missing by half. Even the beams were exposed. The house seemed to have a door. It was unlatched. The entire house looked like it was built with wooden planks. After the wind and rain eroded, a moldy smell wafted over. Xiao Huan frowned, but Zhou Yixian was rather happy, slowly walked into the yard, looked around, although it was overgrown with weeds, but there was nothing strange. Seemed like although he still could not remember what kind of house this was, but at least it should not be dangerous. Chapter 387. He turned and called Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist in. Xiao Huan walked to Zhou Yixian, hesitated for a moment, suddenly turned and said to Wild Dog Taoist, "Priest, do you feel the layout of this house? We seem to have seen it somewhere before?" Wild Dog Taoist was surprised, looked around, did not understand for a long time, shook his head, indicated he did not know. Tanis Ka impatiently said, "What do you remember? This house is so old, even your grandfather I cannot remember. Don't tell me you have seen it before?" Xiao Huan shrugged her shoulders, said, "That's true, never mind, let's go in and take a look." Tanis Ka laughed, waved his hand and said, "Let's go." Then, he led the two of them to the stone steps in front of the house. Jia pushed the door open. Just when Tanis Ka was standing at the door, peeking into the dark house, Xiao Huan suddenly felt her feet moved, touched something. She looked down. It was a shabby black card. There seemed to be some words on it. Out of curiosity, she squatted down and pulled out the black wooden tablet from the ruins. She brushed away the debris and carefully looked at it. After a moment, her body suddenly trembled and she took a few steps back. Even her face was a bit pale. She was a bit angry and loudly said, "Grandpa, look at this place." Tanis Ka turned his head in shock. Obviously, although he looked for a long time, but the house was too dark. He could not see clearly, said, "What, Xiao Huan?" Xiao Huan pointed at his feet, angrily said, "Look for yourself." Tanis Ka looked down, looked carefully at the wooden card. Suddenly he was stunned, shook his head, used his hand to wipe his eyes, looked again, suddenly with a loud cry, jumped down from the stone steps. His hands were vigorous, did not look like an old person at all. On the black card, although the words were blurred but could still be recognized as morgue, 2 words. Xiao Huan was angry and afraid, angrily said to Tanis Ka, "You! What kind of place are you leading us to? Actually brought us to this damned place again. Last time in Hyang City, you have done this kind of thing." Tanis Ka's old face turned red and white, extremely embarrassed, said, This old man also said, "I really only remember there is a house here, but I really can't remember what it is used for, so it is." Xiao Huan spat, interrupted him, said, "You talk too much. Why are you talking so much? Let's go." Tanis Ka hurriedly said, Yes, let's go. Every time we encounter this kind of place we will be unlucky. He was hurriedly turning around. When he was speaking, he suddenly stopped. Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist, who were following behind him, almost knocked into him. Xiao Huan popped her head out from behind, angrily said, "Grandfather, what are you doing again?" Her voice suddenly paused. Right now, the moonless night, under the sparse starlight, in front of the haunted house in the wilderness, Tanis Ka and the other two stood stunned. In front of them, at the entrance of the courtyard that they had just entered from, stood a figure. That person was rather tall. The material of his clothes also seemed to be pretty good, just that his entire body was extremely dirty. Even his clothes were torn in a few places. They could barely see that it was originally dark green color. Looking at the style, it seemed to be a Taoist robe worn by a monk. For some reason, that person's face seemed to be in the shadows. Tanis Ka and the rest could not see his face clearly, but that person had silently appeared behind them. Like a ghost, a gush of cold air rose from their backs. After a long time, that person like a stone stood there motionless, made Tanis Ka and the rest even more frightened. From this person, they could not feel a trace of a living person's breath. You? Who exactly are you? Her voice trembled slightly, but finally it was Xiao Huan who slowly opened her mouth and asked. That person did not react, not to mention answer, but after a moment, the shadow that shrouded his face, suddenly like ghost fire, lit up two faint dark red lights, as if a pair of strange eyes were staring deeply at the person before them. Ah! Suddenly, Tanis Ka made a light cry. Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist were shocked, turned and saw that Tanis Ka was not looking at that person's face. Instead, his eyes were looking at that person's arm, said, That is Qin Yunsek's symbol. 10,000 great mountains, subdue devil ancient cave. The darkness seemed to be endless, blocking in front of Ghostly and Jean Pinger. They walked for a long time, but this road seemed to be endless. But the strange thing was, in this ancient cave, there seemed to be only one path, there were no other forks, and the worry of getting lost was avoided. Ever since passing the Black Bat, in the subdued devil ancient cave, at intervals of distance, there would be one or a few tyrannical demons guarding. Some of them even made Jean Pinger surprised. But Ghostly at this moment displayed a power that he had never shown before, like a hot knife through butter, directly killed his way in. Almost no demon could withstand his attacks, even that three-eyed monkey Xiao Hui. Its valiance was also shocking. That Black Bat's fate also happened to a few other tyrannical demons. Jean Pinger did not make a move along the way, but along the way, her expression turned uglier and uglier. Ghostly's skills were high, the speed of his improvement, far beyond her imagination, until the end she secretly thought, in the evil sect, could there be anyone who could compare to this person? That Ghost King with great talent and bold vision? Or that unfathomable Mr. Ghost? Right now, Ghostly had just in front of Jean Pinger, sent a ferocious two-headed demon leopard flying. That huge beast body heavily crashed onto the hard stone wall, looking like it was doomed. Ghostly did not look at that leopard. His expression did not change, continued to walk forward. Xiao Hui on his shoulder instead seemed to be in high spirits, looking around. Jean Pinger followed behind them, passed by that two-headed demon leopard, turned her head and saw that on the leopard's body, the thick body was actually shriveled, as if the essence in its body was sucked away. This was naturally caused by the sinister orb evil power. Just that this kind of demonic beast itself was an extremely tyrannical creature, even though Ghostly had the soul-devouring stick in his hand, but in an instant he was able to kill such a huge demonic beast. This level of cultivation, it was not just powerful, it was terrifying. This man, since when? His skills had advanced by leaps and bounds. Jean Pinger was more and more alarmed, watching Ghostly's back. Her gaze became more and more complicated. And at this moment, suddenly Ghostly stopped, a wary expression slowly surfaced on his face. Jean Pinger was startled. Along the way, although there were many demon beasts guarding, but she had never seen Ghostly with such a cautious expression. She quickly concentrated, and as expected realized something was wrong with the surroundings. After the death of the two-headed demon leopard, the surroundings resumed its usual silence, but right now in that shapeless darkness, a deep and serene singing voice was heard. Small Pine Hill, the moon like frost, people like floating cotton flowers also heard. 10 over years, 3,000 years, I hope we do not forget each other. That voice was mournful, although it did not sound loud, but for some reason it entered the ears. Every word was heard clearly. Listening to the voice at first, it seemed extremely desolate, and then the state of mind became sorrowful, as if in the unseen world, following the singer through 3,000 years, reliving that unknown yet poignant gentleness. Time is heartless like a knife. What warms your heart? Is it only a pair of faint smiling eyes? Have you forgotten? Many years later, or another cycle of vicissitudes? What you remember, what is it? That blank emptiness was like a memory, staring blankly at the darkness, far away. Once, have I ever hugged before? And you? The monkey Xiao Hui suddenly called out, as if it was extremely happy. It actually jumped down from Ghostly's shoulder, and scurried into the darkness. Chapter 388. Xiao Hui's figure in a blink disappeared into the darkness. Ghostly also did not expect that Xiao Hui would suddenly make such a strange move, was surprised, but he did not stand up to pursue, instead slowly lifted his head, listening to the faint singing in the darkness. The singing sounded somewhat familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere before? How many years, just like this singing, hurriedly passed by. Jean Pinger walked to Ghostly, carefully looked around, quietly said, "What is it?" Ghostly did not answer. His face instead revealed a complicated expression. Xiao Hui's voice was heard indistinctly from afar. It seemed that after the cries, there was a surprised sound, but very soon, Xiao Hui was silent, and that lingering resentful song also slowly stopped. In the dark cave, the surroundings were strangely silent, as if there was something watching their figures in the darkness. Ghostly's eyes slowly became clear, staring at the darkness ahead. Jean Pinger instead seemed uneasy. That song just now made her uncomfortable, and right now the eerie unknown darkness instinctively made her feel repulsed. She subconsciously took a step closer to Ghostly, was about to speak when suddenly, a bright light flashed in the darkness. Almost at the same time, Ghostly and Jean Pinger's countenances changed. The difference was, Ghostly was startled, Jean Pinger instead seemed to heave a sigh of relief. A faint white light flashed in the darkness, swiftly flew out, shot towards the light where the two of them were. Ghostly stood without moving. As expected, that white light passed by him, headed straight for Jean Pinger. Jean Pinger smiled coldly. To her, the enemy's sudden attack did not seem to bother her. What she was more concerned about was instead the unknown silence just now. That white light in a blink was before her. Jean Pinger's face turned cold, a light sound from her mouth, her right hand flipped, immediately a purple light lit up. In Ghostly's soul-devouring green light circle, a faint green-purple light carrying a dreamy feeling swept past, struck down from the air, accurately struck that white light. Pah! That white light was actually cut into two by Jean Pinger's purple light magical weapon, split into two, flew out to both sides, just that it had not flown 6 chi away. The two white lights brightened again, the originally shrunken body abruptly returned to its original size. It was like two strange white halos appeared at the same time, whistling and spiraling back. At the same time a sharp whistling sound suddenly sounded in the air. The speed was actually more than doubled. Jean Pinger's originally relaxed and calm face changed. She snorted. The purple light blade rose again, but 2 rays of purple light almost at the same time. The white object that was flying again was also cut into 2 halves by her, becoming 4, powerlessly flew out. Just that strange white light, like an evil spirit, after flying out for a short distance, again brightened, swiftly returned to its original size, turned into 4 white objects of the same size, again swiftly shot towards Jean Pinger, this time with even more speed. Jean Pinger's face finally darkened, revealing a dignified expression. She retreated, but in this deep cave there was not much space. Very soon Jean Pinger was surrounded by these strange white halos, only to hear Jean Pinger's clear shout. Purple light flashed. Those white lights were quickly struck down or sent flying by Jean Pinger, but these little things were really strange. Almost after a moment, they recovered and once again ruthlessly attacked Jean Pinger. At the same time, the white light bodies that were split by Jean Pinger became more and more. Slowly, Jean Pinger's figure was covered by them. Looking from afar, the white halos danced and lingered, like slowly weaving into a light cocoon, about to trap Jean Pinger in it. Ghostly, who was standing beside, saw Jean Pinger was finding it more and more difficult to deal with these mysterious white lights, but did not make a move. But one could imagine, that mysterious person in the darkness had yet to appear. With just this skill, he was able to entangle Jean Pinger to such a state. It could be seen that this person's evil skill was very strong. It was really not a small matter. Most likely it was the mysterious evildoer that the ferocious black tiger mentioned. Watching Jean Pinger's situation gradually becoming critical, but for some reason, although the white lights were increasing in number and intensity, Jean Pinger was still able to persevere. The white lights attacked more and more urgently. The momentum became louder and louder, in the vast cave. Right now the white light had already overpowered the original soul-devouring green light. The whistling sounds in the air also became louder and louder. Watching Jean Pinger was also gradually in dire straits, but she was still able to persevere, just that nobody knew how long more she could hold on. Ghostly suddenly moved, but he did not fly towards Jean Pinger. Instead he charged into the darkness. Almost at the same time he moved, the soul-devouring green light which had been enveloping him instantly extinguished. The next moment, he blended into the darkness. His figure could no longer be seen. Far away, a cold snort seemed to be heard. In the familiar darkness, cold air drifted everywhere. Far away, the strange lights attacking Jean Pinger were heard howling sounds, but nearby, it was instead a strange silence. Suddenly, the calm ground began to tremble violently. Even the stone walls of the cave began to shake. After a loud noise came from the top of the cave, countless small stones and sand began to fall slowly. It was a blurry scene. Amidst the rumbling sounds, chaos appeared everywhere, and the darkness seemed to become thicker and thicker. At this moment, the falling stones suddenly stopped in mid-air, and for a moment, it was as if time had stopped and everything was still. After a moment, a sharp whistle suddenly sounded, and all the stones and dust gathered into a huge torrent, rumbling as it rushed towards a certain place in the darkness. That current's momentum was astonishing. Along the way it was like toppling the mountains and overturning the seas. Nothing could stop it. It was about to reach the end of the darkness. Suddenly, in the darkness, a fair and slender hand stretched out. The index finger and little finger of the palm were erected. The ring finger was half bent. The thumb and middle finger were gently intertwined, impressively forming a seal similar to that of the Buddhist sect. But it did not have the slightest dignified aura of the Buddhist sect. Instead it was more of an indescribable seductive demonic charm and dense demonic power. Invisible chi instantly condensed on the seal formed by the hand. In that instant, the palm seemed to have expanded countless times, like a giant palm that forcibly blocked the torrent. In the next moment, when one looked closely, they discovered that the palm was still the same slender palm, and nothing had changed. Just that once unstoppable current was blocked in the air, a deafening sound, numerous huge stones lost their momentum, crashed down, instantly sand flew up. Ghost Lee's disappeared figure suddenly flashed out from the flying sand and stones, like lightning pounced towards that hand. That fair hand's seal changed, 4 fingers half-curled, the thumb clasped horizontally and pressed down. Almost at the same time, Jean Pinger whistled. The purple light which was suppressed by the white light bodies suddenly exploded, like a purple halo bursting out. For a moment the light shone brightly. But it did not look like Jean Pinger had broken through the white light's suppression. On the contrary, her expression was extremely ugly, and right now the strange white light which had already dispersed into innumerable spots, scattered and again gathered together, formed into an enormous white light wall, in the blink of an eye, like a blazing wall of light, with a raging wave-like speed charged towards Ghostly from behind. The light wave had yet to reach him. Ghost Lee's breathing had already stopped. His body, which was flying in the air, also swayed. It could be seen how powerful that light wave was. If he was hit by it, there was a possibility of him being smashed into pieces. Just that Ghost Lee's expression did not change, as if he did not care about that dangerous white huge wave behind him. His body sped up towards that fair hand. Just that although he was fast, that light wave was really like lightning, from far to near, like a raging wave was already behind him, looking like it was about to swallow him up. Jean Pinger, who was far away, could not help but softly exclaimed. And in the darkness, that fair hand seemed to tremble slightly. And at this moment, Ghost Lee's left hand suddenly stretched out, thumb clasping tightly to his palm, middle finger half bent, 3 fingers straight like a mountain, formed an orthodox Buddhist Vajra seal. Looking at his palm slowly pushing out, the image was solemn and solemn, giving one a feeling of being as dignified as a mountain. This pushing force was the power of Buddha's great benevolence, using his great power to move the mountain. In the silence there was thunder. In the darkness there was a great radiance. In an instant, the solemn golden light in the palm surged, Buddhist incantations flashed past, that raging wave-like light wall arrived with a rumble, abruptly collided with that palm which had formed the seal. Boom! Like a meteor crashing to the ground, rumbling far away, the cave lit up with a strange light, colorful lights dazzled, as if in that instant innumerable colorful eyes opened at the same time, glimmering, captivating one's soul. That white light wall dispersed with a loud rumble, like meteors raining down. Only the darkness in front of him remained the same. Chapter 389. Ghostly was already in front of that palm. He stretched out his hand, right hand grabbed towards that palm. The fair hand flipped up, did not retreat, the 5 fingers suddenly turned into a claw, met it in the air. Ghostly's right hand flashed past in an instant, avoided the sharp blade-like fingertips, grabbed towards the fair hand's wrist. That mysterious figure's palm flipped, actually flashed past in the blink of an eye, instead his fingers like a knife, cut towards Ghostly's right hand base. In the blink of an eye, the palms of the 2 people in midair were as fast as lightning, flashing as fast as light. Each move was an extremely sharp killer move against the enemy, but they were all dodged by the opponent, and the counterattack was even more ferocious. Just that in this instant there was not a single sound. The 2 of them had fought to this stage. Life and death seemed to be within a breath's time, but their palms had never touched. Until the meteor shower behind him finally fell completely. Darkness suddenly descended once more, covering all the light. Deep in the darkness, a light sound was suddenly heard. That sound was crisp and low, faintly heard, without any murderous aura, but like when we were together in childhood, the sound of 2 hands gently clapping. And then, everything returned to silence. Grabbed that hand. He held it, that hand. What he felt, there was no murderous aura, no evil power, only softness and gentleness. Like suddenly, the sky and earth were spinning, flying past thousands of mountains and rivers, blue sea and blue sky, were all embraced into his arms. Those gentle figures were all beside him, never left. Just like that, a lifetime of joy, a laugh, passed by carefreely. Wasn't this fairyland? Could this be life? From now on, drunk, never to wake up, could it be even better? The faint darkness seemed to be tempting someone? Just that, he suddenly opened his eyes in the darkness, both eyes like blood, facing the sky with a long howl. That palm suddenly shook, retracted back, Ghostly's entire body glowed with green light, the soul-absorbing stick instantly appeared in his hand, the sinister orb at the tip of the orb's dark red color all lit up, evil energy billowed, towards the deepest part of the darkness, pierced in. Noiselessly, that space suddenly froze, the entire darkness like solidified into solid rock, indestructible, but the soul-absorbing stick was blunt and blunt. For some reason that extremely strong evil power boundary had no effect on it, was pierced by the soul-absorbing stick like a hot knife through butter. Finally, someone slightly angrily snorted, that dark boundary instantly dispersed, a human figure flew back 1 zhang, dodging the soul-devouring's unstoppable stab. Just that in a blink, Ghostly's figure like a shadow pasted over, that mysterious figure did not disperse and did not look panicked, instead stretched out a hand, this time the fingers closed, clenched into a delicate fist, struck towards Ghostly. Ghostly's countenance instead changed slightly, his body immediately paused, frowning slightly, the red light in his eyes suddenly dissipated. Even the soul-absorbing stick also instantly disappeared from his hand. His chest was wide open, both of his hands raised up, facing that ordinary delicate fist, slowly drew down in the air, dignified like a mountain, light like flowing water. The next moment, a gentle clear light floated up. Between his arms, in the air, slowly appeared a Taiji diagram. Taiji Xian Qing Wei. That fist struck up, hit right in the middle of the Taiji diagram, slowly sank in, causing this Taiji diagram to cave inward. Ghostly's face turned slightly pale. It seemed that in that instant, His breathing also stopped, but the next moment, that taiji diagram in the air slowly started to spin, and the place where the fist had sunk in, although tightened but did not stop, on the contrary, as the spin gradually sped up, that silent enormous evil power was being softened by this Taoism's supreme true way's flexible power, bit by bit dissolved. The taiji diagram spun faster and faster, even that hand also started to tremble, that mysterious figure snorted again, but this time his voice sounded slightly pained. Evidently the taiji xian qing wei's counterattack power was not to be underestimated. Ho! A low whistle, the taiji diagram dispersed, and that fair hand also retracted back into the darkness, as if there was a moment of tranquility. Suddenly, Ghostly flew up. The deep darkness ahead seemed to not be able to obstruct him, as if even in the darkness, he still had a pair of eyes hidden in his heart, slowly seeing the path ahead. That mysterious figure in the darkness was retreating, his movements swift but Ghostly pursued closely. The two of them in this ancient cave, in that deepest darkness, flew faster and faster, transformed into two lightning in the darkness, flashed past the deepest part of the cave. This flight seemed to be endless. The darkness in front of him was like a ferocious beast baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Then, it fell behind him in an instant. Even further away, there were countless unknown darkness waiting for him. The strong wind was like a knife. In that split second, who did you think of? That pursuit was like life, never stopping, just that in the end, not knowing if you were lost or forgot your original intention, not knowing how much time had passed, not knowing how much distance had been covered, only that along the way, the terrain was slowly descending, as if they were already deep underground, and behind them was only silence. Jean Pinger had long been shaken off by them, nowhere to be seen. That mysterious figure suddenly stopped, turned around in the darkness, facing the direction where he came from. Ghostly immediately noticed this movement. His figure paused and also slowly stopped. In the darkness, the two of them faced each other, for a moment did not speak. The next moment, Ghostly's dark green halo once again lit up, illuminating the surroundings, just that the darkness ahead, the light seemed to be unable to shine in. That mysterious figure suddenly said, "Good power." The voice sounded gentle and pleasant, although it was spoken indifferently, but for some reason, it made one's heart palpitate. Ghostly, under the faint dark green light, stared at that darkness, his face calm. His tone was also calm, totally not like he had just gone through a soul-stirring battle with this person. Said, "You flatter me." That female voice sneered, said, "In the battle just now, in a flash, you combined evil sect way, Tian Yin Temple Great Brahmin Wisdom Buddha way, and Qing Yun sect Tai Ji Xian Qing Wei Taoism True Way, the three sects' first-class true way cultivation, and used it according to the situation. There was not the slightest hesitation when switching. It can be seen that you have completely mastered it. And the three sects' cultivation are not to be underestimated. Just that Tai Ji Xian Qing Wei cultivation is so powerful, I'm afraid other than that old man Daoxian, even in Qing Yun sect, no one can match you." She slowly paused for a moment and then said word by word, "Your skills, how did you improve so quickly?" Ghostly did not speak, only looked at that darkness, suddenly smiled and slowly said, "Why, my cultivation is smooth. Do you find it very strange?" In the dark shadows, suddenly a few familiar cries were heard. The next moment, a figure scurried out, looking carefully, gray fur, long tail. It was the monkey Xiao Hui. It grinned, scratched its head, hopped twice on the ground and returned to Ghostly's side, scurried up his shoulder and then sat down, its tail still wagging and wagging. That female in the darkness did not speak, became silent. Ghostly looked at that darkness, emotions slowly appeared in his eyes. His voice also seemed to become gentler, smiled and said, "It is you, right? I really did not expect to meet you here." That female who was hidden in the darkness suddenly spat, said, "Do you still remember me? Don't you have such an enchanting woman beside you?" Ghostly was surprised, couldn't help but felt embarrassed, smiled bitterly and said, "What nonsense are you talking about?" That female was clearly annoyed, coldly said, By doing this, aren't you afraid of letting down that person who is still lying on the ice bed? Ghostly shook his head and said, You misunderstood, I don't know this place. It was Ghost King's sect leader who ordered her to lead the way. He paused for a moment, indifferently said, What kind of person I am, it's not like you don't know. That female in the darkness snorted, but obviously she was not that angry anymore, said, How would I know what kind of person you are? I only know that there are never good men. Ghostly frowned, shook his head slightly, smiled bitterly and did not answer. The darkness ahead slowly dispersed. Under the illumination of Ghost Li's soul-devouring green light, a human figure slowly appeared. Xiao Hui, who was on Ghost Li's shoulder, grinned and called out a few times to that graceful figure, very affectionate. In the dim light, that female was alluring, gentle and charming. If it was not that long-missing nine-tailed celestial fox Xiao Bai, who else could it be? Chapter 390. Central Plains, outside Heyong City, abandoned morgue. In the wilderness, at a glance, the terrain was relatively flat. Other than looking to the north, there was a towering Qing Yun mountain range. The rest of the directions, even the undulating hills, were rare. Many trees grew haphazardly far and near, big or small, scattered on this wilderness. Around the morgue, there were also a few sparse trees standing. The sky was at its darkest. In addition, the clouds were very thick, blocking the moon. Only a few small stars at the edge emitted weak light, shining on this desolate land. That night, the wind started to blow. It wasn't particularly strong, but when it blew past the treetops, the branches swayed and shadows flashed, emitting a low rustling sound. Listening to it and blowing on the body, it felt especially cold. Tanis Ka, Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist stood closely together, watching that mysterious person in front. From the time Zhou Yixian discovered that person, it had been a while, but that person was like a zombie, standing there without moving. Just that he blocked the door, Zhou Yixian and the other two could not go out. Xiao Huan composed herself, lowered her voice, softly said to Tanis Ka, Grandfather, you really saw clearly. He is wearing Qing Yun sect Taoist robe. Wild Dog Taoist also turned his head, listened attentively. Tanis Yixian glanced at that wooden figure, then nodded his head and said, Can't be wrong, look at the sword insignia on his sleeve, it is indeed Qing Yun sect. Xiao Huan muttered, Isn't Qing Yun sect a reputable good faction sect? Why would they come to this ghastly place in the middle of the night to scare people? Wild Dog Taoist also nodded. Clearly even he who had never liked the good faction, also did not believe that Qing Yun sect disciples would do such things. Tanis Ka rolled his eyes at them, coughed once. No matter what, although he was shocked when he first discovered that figure, but after a while, that strange figure, although still mysterious, did not do anything to harm or antagonize them. Tanis Ka could not help but grow a little braver. He slowly took a step forward, laughed dryly twice, said, This, Mister, please forgive us for offending you. We did not know that this is your residence, grandfather. Xiao Huan called out from behind, interrupted Tanis Ka. Her tone was slightly annoyed, and the figure in front suddenly moved, seemed to have some reaction to Tanis Ka's words. Tanis Ka frowned, but immediately reacted. This was a morgue. If he said this was the residence of this person, wouldn't it be the same as calling him a dead person or a ghost? Tanis Ka couldn't help but felt a chill down his spine, quickly smiled and said, This old man is saying, the three of us are taking a stroll in the middle of the night, accidentally came to this place, there is no other intention, Mister, please don't mind. We didn't see anything. We're leaving. After speaking, he turned and winked at Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist. The three of them braced themselves and slowly moved to the side, thinking to walk past this ghost-like figure. Unexpectedly, after a few steps, the three of them felt a blur in front of them. That black figure was actually blocking in front of them again, and the distance was even closer. Xiao Huan could even faintly smell a bloody stench from that person. Looking at the dark and windy sky above their heads, a black mass of shadow swept past. Tanis Ka, Wild Dog Taoist's countenance changed, Xiao Huan even paled, with a cry, jumped back a few steps, eager to get as far away from that black figure as possible. Xiao Huan cried out, although it was her own subconscious cry. As a young girl, she would always be disgusted by these things, but in the ears of others, it was a different matter. Tanis Ka and Wild Dog Taoist were startled. Tanis Ka quickly looked back. Wild Dog Taoist instead gathered his courage, with a tiger roar. More like a dog bark, jumped out, stood in front of Xiao Huan and Tanis Ka. At the same time a halo flashed in his hand. He had already brandished out his own Beast Fang magical weapon. In the darkness of the night, that faint yellow halo, although weak, but it seemed to have some warmth. Xiao Huan saw Wild Dog Taoist like that. She herself was also startled, did not understand, in that instant, that figure whose face was always shrouded in the shadows suddenly swayed. That person's hand stretched out straight ahead, a gush of strange energy followed, but it was definitely not Qin Yunsek's honorable way. Wild Dog Taoist knew in his heart that this person was unfathomable, but there was a lady standing behind him. No matter what, he could not retreat. Immediately, with an angry shout, the beast tooth magical weapon immediately shone brightly, striking towards that person. In the morgue courtyard, the darkness seemed to be forced back by Wild Dog Taoist, on his face, for that instant, seeing that the figure did not seem to resist. He also looked stunned, and even more delighted. The next moment, Wild Dog Taoist's Beast Fang magical weapon hit solidly on that figure's chest. That mysterious and extremely powerful figure did not evade Wild Dog Taoist's heavy blow. Wild Dog Taoist himself could not believe it. Tanis Ka and Xiao Huan were also stunned. Ahead of them the Beast Fang magical weapon glowed with yellow light, with a victorious spirit. Just that, after a moment, the three of them realized something was wrong. That person who was hit in the chest by Wild Dog Taoist's full strength did not even waver, although Wild Dog Taoist's skills were far from ghostly and the rest, but he was after all an evil sect figure who had cultivated for many years. The power of this blow was not to be underestimated. Ordinary people would most likely be hit until their blood and qi were in turmoil. Even if they did not die, they would at least lose half their life. And this strange figure did not seem to feel anything. Closely following that person seemed to quietly snort. Wild Dog Taoist suddenly exclaimed, without seeing how that person moved. That outstretched hand instantly returned to him, grabbed Wild Dog Taoist's Beast Fang magical weapon in his hand. His own magical weapon being held by someone, this was an extremely dangerous thing to a cultivator. How could Wild Dog Taoist not be anxious and angry? With a shout, exerted all his power, wanted to call the magical weapon back. Unexpectedly that Beast Fang was lying in that person's hand. Without seeing how he exerted any strength, it did not react to its master's power. That person lowered his head, looked at the thing in his hand, and then spoke for the first time. His voice was hoarse, almost inaudible, but with an obvious disdainful tone, coldly said, "Evil small Taoist, also dare to be presumptuous here." Wild Dog Taoist was shocked and was about to summon his magical weapon again. Suddenly he heard Tanis Ka's anxious voice behind him. "Retreat, quickly retreat." Wild Dog Taoist was shocked, instinctively retreated a few steps, was about to question Zhou Yixuan when that person's hand suddenly tightened. That beast tooth magical weapon almost made an ear-piercing sound like broken bones. Wild Dog Taoist was shocked, but the yellow light surged and then immediately dissipated in the sounds like the last moans of a ferocious beast, struggling in pain, but a sound. Wild Dog Taoist's magical weapon Beast Tooth was actually crushed by that person's bare hands. The fragments like knives shot out, the sounds, in that instant incessant, all hit the place where Wild Dog Taoist was standing just now. Wild Dog Taoist felt heartache and fear, for a moment could not speak. That strange person's face was still shrouded by a ball of mysterious shadow. The three of them could not see his face clearly. His voice was low and hoarse. He slowly looked up at the sky, but the black shadow on his face still did not retreat. Unspeakably strange, after destroying this Beast Fang, He seemed to have a feeling of venting, slowly sneered, in their ears, against this strange morgue, the whistling een wind in the sky. Tanis Ka and the rest all felt their blood run cold. Tanis Ka was feeling uneasy. Suddenly his eyes focused, looked at that strange person's arm. The hand that crushed the beast Fong unknowingly had a layer of faint cyan light, and that cyan light was completely different from this person's aura, pure and gentle. It was actually the purest Taoist true Wei realm. Tanis Ka raised his head in shock, took a step forward. For a moment he forgot his worries, ignored Xiao Huan and Wild Dog Taoist who were trying to stop him, said, "Who exactly are you?" Wearing Qing Yun sect Taoist robe, and cultivated Tai Chi Xian Qing Wei not lower than Shang Qing realm, which Qing Yun sect master, actually did such an absurd thing at this time? The cyan light flashed and retracted. That person slowly looked at Tanis Ka, through the layer of strange black air on his face. Tanis Ka felt a chill all over his body. That person's hoarse voice coldly said, "You really know quite a lot." Tanis Ka snorted, his face solemn, kept sizing up that person. The puzzlement on his face became heavier and heavier. In a deep voice said, "You are indeed from Qing Yun sect, and definitely not an ordinary disciple, but who exactly are you, for what reason, making trouble here?" That person sneered but did not answer. Tanis Ka suddenly sensed something, turned back and looked. It was Xiao Huan gently pulling his sleeve, quietly said, "Grandpa, this person is covered with ghost energy. I can feel, there is not a single wandering nether spirit in this morgue. Most likely they were all scared away by this person. If not, I would have known something was wrong here. This kind of person, how can he be from Qing Yun sect?" Chapter 391. Tanis Ka's face was uncertain, his expression complicated. Obviously his thoughts were also in a mess. Facing this mysterious person who was linked to Qing Yun's sect in countless ways, he did not seem to be afraid like usual, and instead seemed to be lost in his thoughts. That mysterious person's attention right now slowly focused on Tanis Ka, assessed Tanis Ka from top to bottom, suddenly sneered, coldly said, "I don't care who you are, if you dare to go against me, you will all have to die." Once he finished, his hand was already raised. Tanis Ka saw the green light in his hand instantly lit up. His old face turned pale. Without even time to speak, both of his hands suddenly waved, raised to his chest. Between his left and right index and middle fingers, a piece of yellow talisman paper appeared. On it were curved, crookedly drawn with strange talismans, slightly fluttering in the wind. The green light in the mysterious person's hand gradually brightened, and aimed at Tanis Ka and the rest. Tanis Ka did not hesitate, suddenly muttered an incantation, did not retreat but advanced, took a step forward. As he took a step, following his incantation, the two yellow talisman papers actually burned by themselves. Two small balls of fire, in this dark night, suddenly appeared, looked especially bright. This strange action seemed to have caused the mysterious man on the other side to hesitate, or perhaps it had triggered some of his memories. It actually caused his movements to pause for a moment, and he vaguely let out a surprised "huh?" The talisman papers burned, Tanis Ka's white beard fluttered. Suddenly he shouted, both hands swung, two balls of fire floated out from his fingers, actually condensed in the air. Immediately after, a loud sound, the two balls of fire expanded with the wind, became a ball of several chi big raging fire, blocking between Tanis Ka and the mysterious person. Ho-ah! A roar came from the sky, and a huge white tiger jumped out from the raging flames. It was full of vigor, and it opened its bloody mouth and let out a roar that shook the surroundings. It jumped up with a loud bang and pounced towards the black shadow. The mysterious man snorted coldly and didn't retreat at all. His right hand flashed with a green light as he chopped down. No matter how ferocious the giant tiger was, this palm strike landed on the giant tiger's forehead. The green light instantly corroded the white tiger's forehead. The white tiger seemed to be struggling, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, but after a moment, it let out a final unwilling roar. The giant tiger's entire body suddenly shone with a green light, Then it shook for a while, and this huge body unexpectedly disappeared into thin air. It turned into a few remnant flames that flickered twice in the air before disappearing without a trace. But this was not the end of the white tiger. Almost at the same time the huge tiger disappeared, in that huge ball of flames, a red maned lion, in the lion's roar, again pounced towards the mysterious person. But the mysterious person's skills were obviously extremely high, almost did not even look straight at it, again with the same palm strike. That lion's outcome was the same as the white tiger. Just that the special skill that Zhou Yixian displayed this time was really strange, although the transformed huge beasts could not withstand one hit from the enemy, but in that ball of raging fire, who knows how many strange beasts transformed by mana, after the huge tiger and lion, that ball of fire transformed more and more ferocious beasts, and their speed also became faster and faster, all kinds of beasts like wild boar, leopard, hippopotamus, giant elephant, spiritual deer, mountain cat, etc., emerged one after another, and their bodies were all extraordinarily majestic, extremely ferocious. But this time facing that mysterious person seemed to really have supernatural skills, facing these beasts that came one after another, too many for the eyes to take in. He did not even breathe heavily, only seemed to casually wave his arm, wherever his palm passed. Even the most ferocious beasts also turned into nothingness. In the midst of the fierce battle, the mysterious man suddenly snorted coldly. As if he had sensed something, he abruptly changed his palm strike into a sweep. Immediately, green light flourished and a bright light like a wheel directly crushed over. His imposing manner was forceful and invincible. When the ball of raging flames encountered the green light pillar, it resisted for a while before it was finally pierced through and passed through. In the mid-air, there seemed to be thousands of beasts roaring in anger at the same time, but then it stopped, the flames disappeared, in the flickering light, only two yellow talismans that were about to be burnt out slowly floated down from the mid-air. In the courtyard of the morgue, temporarily returned to peace, and on the other side of the courtyard, Tanis Ka and the other two who had just sneaked to the corner of the wall, turned back in shock, obviously did not expect that the enemy could so quickly break Tanis Ka's spell. Without the illusion spell to block, running away with one's back was obviously a laughable and stupid idea. Tanis Ka and the other two stopped for a moment, slowly turned back. And that mysterious person slowly approached, slowly walked over. The black figure with thick murderous aura, inside the morgue, it was a scene of killing. Tanis Ka's brows tightly frowned, obviously worried about something, but seeing the black figure coming closer, he felt that his life and death was within a breath's time. Tawny's countenance changed, suddenly wanted to step forward to counter, but before she could, she was already pulled back by Tanis Ka, quietly scolded. Nonsense, this person is not to be trifled with, not someone that a child like you can handle. Xiao Huan was slightly surprised, looked at Zhou Yixian in astonishment, as if she had never seen her grandfather so nervous and cautious. At this moment the approaching shadow paused, a hoarse voice coldly said, "The illusion that you used just now, is it?" Halfway through, Tanis Ka suddenly, as if disregarding everything, both of his arms abruptly waved up, this time appearing in his palms, were as many as 8 pieces of yellow talisman paper. The night breeze blew, the 8 talisman paper spontaneously combusted at the same time, specks of flame, like dancing wildly on Tanis Ka's palms, illuminating his eyes. "Hey! Ghosts of wooding, quickly return to the yellow spring. Shadow form escape, it is my command." Almost at the same time Tanis Ka's shout, inside the morgue, suddenly a gale blew, sand and stones blew in from all directions. That mysterious person paused, seemed surprised, attentively looked around. Tanis Ka's incantation came out, in the air, 5 muffled sounds were heard. Tanis Ka and the other two's figures faintly swayed for a moment, then stopped. The gale howled, rolled up the yellow sand, blew towards that mysterious person. His clothes fluttered. But in the gale, the black air on his face did not move, instead a cold laugh came out again. That person actually gave up the 3 who were casting, suddenly retreated 6 steps, with a light shout, his left hand stabbed towards the ground, a dark green halo instantly stabbed down, the hard ground immediately exploded. For some reason, in the flickering dark green light, Tanis Ka and the other 2's figures suddenly started to tremble violently, and under the ground, a cry with pain was suddenly heard. Aya! The dark green light flashed. Inside the morgue, the gale reduced greatly, the sand and stones also gradually calmed down. After a moment, where Tanis Ka and the other 2 were standing, the ground suddenly exploded, followed by a loud bang, a big hole was blasted open, the 3 standing figures suddenly disappeared. Unknowingly they had already become illusions. And in the big hole on the ground, with a few cries and pain, 3 figures staggered out. Who else could it be but Tanis Ka and the other 2? The faces of the 3 were covered with dust. Tanis Ka's face was green and purple, obviously he was at a disadvantage. But he didn't seem to have time to care about this, only raised his head to look at the mysterious person. His face was stunned. That strange and mysterious person coldly stood in the distance, staring at them. He snorted and said in a hoarse voice, "I didn't expect you to actually know the golden armor of 5 ding and little ghost transportation, these long-lost spells. Moreover, you can actually use these 2 great special spells together with the earth burrowing at the same time. I almost underestimated you. Just based on these special spells, I'm afraid there is no one in the world who can surpass you." Tanis Ka's face was solemn, although he looked comical, but right now he solemnly said, "How did you see through it?" That person indifferently said, "Didn't you say I am from Qin Yun's sect? These Jianghu small spells were Qin Yun's sect founder's special skills. Even if I don't know it, can't I see through it?" Tanis Ka slowly stood up, thoughts flashed in his mind, this time facing this mysterious person. He really felt that he could not deal with him, not to mention his unfathomable skills. Looking at the world, it would be difficult to find someone who could fight against this person. What was even more puzzling was that this person seemed to be from Qin Yun's sect, and his cultivation in Tai Chi Xian Qing Wei was high, rarely seen in his life, but this person's vicious energy was also never seen before. How could there be such a person, and why would he appear in this morgue in the middle of the night? Chapter 392. Qin Yun Hill, Big Bamboo Valley. Outside observed Silence Hall, Big Bamboo Valley disciples from Xavion to Du Baishu stood in a line outside the door, their faces were anxious and worried, looking into the hall from time to time. After a while, footsteps were heard in the hall, a lady walked out. It was Small Bamboo Valley's Wenmin. Xavion and the rest of the Big Bamboo Valley disciples immediately surrounded her. Xavion and Wenmin were familiar with each other. Seeing that there was no one behind, Wenmin quietly asked, "How is my teacher's wife?" Wenmin nodded, softly said, "Su teacher uncle is fine now. Just now when we returned to the mountain she suddenly fainted. Heard from my teacher that it was because she was too worried. Now my teacher is accompanying her inside. She has already woken up." Xavion and the rest all heaved a sigh of relief at the same time, but on their faces, no one could turn happy. Du Baishu with a bitter face said, "This is really a bolt from the blue. There is no news of teacher. This time even teacher's wife almost got into trouble too." "Shut up." Xavion frowned and shouted. Du Baishu smiled bitterly, shook his head and did not speak. Xavion turned to Wenmin, said, "Did my teacher's wife ask you to instruct us anything?" Wenmin shook her head, said, "No, Su teacher uncle only spoke softly with my teacher. After a few words, my teacher let me come out too. Seem like there is something that she does not want me to know." Xavion frowned, said, This, when Min saw him anxious, her heart could not bear it, advised, Song's senior brother, don't be too anxious, anyway it is not a big matter, isn't there still Su teacher uncle and my teacher? Now that there is an unforeseen event, Su teacher uncle seems to be mentally and physically exhausted, the burden here must be shouldered by you. Xavion sighed, nodded and said, What you said is right. After pondering for a moment, he turned to the other junior brothers and said, All right, since we know that teacher's wife is safe, I say everyone don't need to keep standing here. If teacher's wife finds out, it will instead add to her troubles. Everyone, go back to your rooms first. You still have to do your homework. I'll keep it here for now. Wudi, Hidaji and Du Baishu looked at each other. After a moment of silence, second brother Wudi nodded, said, That's good too, we will listen to De Shixiang. After speaking, he turned to Song Darren, said, De Shixiang, later I will come and replace you. Song Darren wanted to shake his head and refuse, but Hidaji patted his shoulder and said, Eldest Shixiang, you told us to take a good rest, but you shouldn't act carelessly. Shenyang won't like you like this. Song Darren bitterly smiled and nodded. The crowd gradually dispersed, leaving only Xavion and Wenmin standing outside the hall, speechless. Both of them looked at each other. Wenmin suddenly blushed and slowly lowered her head. Xavion coughed once, felt his heart beating faster, quickly calmed himself down, laughed dryly and said, 1. Junior sister, didn't you just go to the southern border with your small bamboo valley Lu Sweki? Why are you back so soon? Wenmin shook her head and said, I did go to the southern border. Initially I did not intend to return so early, but something strange happened there. After discussing with Lu junior sister, we felt that it was not a small matter, so I rushed back first to report to teacher and the elders. Lu junior sister will stay in the southern border and act according to the circumstances. Xavion was surprised, said, What is it? Why is it so important? Wenmin hesitated for a moment, looked around and then went near Xavion, whispered a few words in his ear. Not waiting for her to finish, Xavion's countenance changed, waited for Wenmin to finish and then left his side, stood in front of him and looked at him, quietly sighed and said, Now you know why I rushed back. Song Darren's face was cloudy. After a while, he said, This is really a troubled time. Wenmin was silent for a long time, quietly said, Who says it isn't? I also feel that before one wave subsides, another wave rises, and after my return, this kind of thing actually happened in our sect. AI. She sighed and didn't say anything more. Xavion stood with her and suddenly felt that the woman beside him was thin and looked a little more delicate. He couldn't help but slowly stand closer. Wenmin was deep in thought, seemed to not feel anything, but her lips moved slightly, but she did not speak, just quietly stood there. Two figures, just like that, quietly stood outside Big Bamboo Peak, observed Silence Hall. Far away, Big Bamboo Valley bamboo rustled, the warm sunlight shone down, in the azure blue sky. It was a beautiful scene with no clouds for thousands of miles, gently watching this world. Observed Silence Hall backyard, in a secluded bedroom, two women sat facing each other. Shueiyue Master was silent for a long time, said, Junior sister, why don't you go lie on the bed for a while? Suru slowly shook her head, although she looked tired but her tone was still determined and deep, said, I am not going. Even if I go, I will not be able to sleep. Shueiyue Master sighed, said, Junior sister, don't worry too much, like what I said to you just now, no matter what, Tian Bui and sect head senior brother disappeared at the same time, you did not see him really encounter. Whatever accident, don't let your imagination run wild. Moreover, although Xian Shixiang is not behaving well recently, but his cultivation is high, far above us, his determination is also the same, Tian Belize is his shitty for many years. He will definitely not act recklessly. Suru was silent, her eyes slightly red again. Shueiyue Master shook her head, stood up, paced a few steps in the room, clearly also feeling perturbed. The current Qing Yun sect's chaotic situation, even the ordinary disciples could see it, not to mention these elders who more or less knew some inside information. Suru forced a smile, diverted the topic, said, Senior sister, why did you suddenly come to Tong Tian Peak today? Shueiyue Master in a bad mood said, Isn't it all because of Fenxiang Valley Yun Elan's trivial matter, originally wanted to discuss with sect head senior brother, didn't expect such a big matter to happen, in the end even the dignified sect head actually disappeared. Suru frowned, said, Fenxiang Valley Head Yun Ilan? What matter does he have that concerns our Qin Yun? Shueihua Master sneered, said, My sect disciples Lu Sueki and Wen Min went to southern border to investigate the whereabouts of the demon beasts. You know about it, right? Suru nodded, said, I know. I was just wondering, why did Wen Min return so quickly, following beside you, that Lu Sueki also returned? Shueihua Master shook her head, said, Sueki has not returned yet. This time after their discussion, it was Wen Min who returned first to report to me. Suru said, What happened? Shueihua Master said, When they went to southern border to visit that Yun Ilan suddenly asked them, if our Qin Yun sect's Zhu Xian ancient sword is already damaged. Suru's countenance changed greatly, said in shock, What? Shueihua Master sneered and said, You are also shocked. When I heard it, I was really shocked too. Yun Ilan was thousands of miles away. How would he know such a big secret? That day Daoxian's senior brother had warned us few of our sects with disciples as if guarding against thieves. It was because he was afraid that this matter would leak out. Do you still remember? Suru was silent for a long time. The worry in her eyes deepened, sighed and said, This is really bad news spreading for thousands of miles. Shueihua Master paced back and forth, said, And have you ever thought, why would Yun Ilan say such things to those juniors? Suru slowly nodded, said, I am also thinking about this. If it is because we are all from the good faction, he should not have mentioned it in front of everyone, and instead hide it for us. If not, he has ulterior motives, but he should hide it well. Waiting for the right opportunity is what people like him should do. That's right. Shueihua Master snorted, said, The problem is here. Yun Ilan, this old fellow, looked like he did a foolish thing that only an idiot would do, did not please both sides, but we all know that this person is not an idiot, but a cunning old fox. But what exactly is he trying to do? It is really incomprehensible. Suru was deep in thought for a long time, suddenly rubbed her temples, her face revealed a pained expression. Shueihua Master was shocked, quickly walked over to support her, said self-reproachfully, Look at me, you are already vexed enough. I still have to say these to you. All right, let's not talk about it. Let's not talk about it. Suru smiled bitterly, said, Ai, if it was in the past, with sect head senior brother presiding over the overall situation, we would not be afraid of these things, but now Qin Yun's sect itself is in a mess. The situation outside is also extremely chaotic, not knowing how. Many enemies are eyeing us, really don't know what to do. Shueihua Master frowned and then gently said, Junior sister, don't say any more, look how tired you are. Didn't I tell you? Sect head senior brother these days, although his temper is strange, different from the past, but his skills and cultivation are divine. His will is firm. We do not need to be afraid of anything. Suru shook her head, casually said, Senior sister, you don't understand. Sect head senior brother, although his skills are high, but Zhu Xian ancient sword's ferocious energy, the stronger it is. Although his skills are high, I'm afraid he has fallen even deeper into the devil. Shueihua Master was surprised, said, What did you say? Suru was shocked, then realized she had spilled the beans and was about to cover it up. Shueihua Master frowned deeply, walked to her, solemnly said, Junior sister, what other secrets does that Zhu Xian ancient sword have? You actually know about it, quickly tell me. Chapter 393. Suru was silent for a long time, sighed and said, Forget it, since it has come to this, sooner or later I will not be able to hide it. Senior sister, I will tell you now. Actually, this was a matter from 100 years ago. Southern border 100,000 mountains, deep in the Devil Suppression Cave. Reuniting after such a long time, after the first words were said, Little White and Ghostly did not know what to say. Only the monkey Little Gray, who was lying on Ghostly's shoulder, seemed to be very happy to see Little White, grinning nonstop. Ghostly was suddenly startled. He seemed to have thought of something. He turned his head to look at the road, but it was only darkness. He couldn't help but frown. He said to Xiao Bai, The woman who came with me, what did you do to her? Little White snorted and said indifferently, What can I do to her? You really have a lot of things to worry about. Ghostly was silent for a moment, and then he shook his head. He didn't want to be entangled in this topic, so he said, "Right, why are you here? After you left that day, I haven't had any news of you. When I came to the Southern Territory this time, I secretly investigated, but I was unable to find you." Whitey smiled. Her figure seemed to be swaying gently in the green light. As she swayed, she was full of moving charm. She said, "Didn't I tell you before I left? I'm going to find the 8 Evils mystical fire formation for you." Ghostly said, "I remember, so I also went to Fun Xiang Valley's mystical fire altar, but did not find anything." "Oh right, you haven't said why you came to this devil suppression cave?" Little White shrugged and said, "I came here, naturally for that array, and also to see an old friend." Ghostly looked at her, muttered, and said, "You mean here?" Little White nodded. "That's right, after the array at Fun Xiang Valley's mystical fire altar was destroyed, in this world, only this devil suppression cave has an intact 8 ferocious mystical fire array, and my old friend is also here." Ghostly's face changed and said slowly, "That old friend you are talking about, could it be?" Little White smiled and said, "It's the king of beast demons that you all speak of, the beast god." Although Ghostly had more or less thought of it, when he heard Little White say it personally, he was still stunned. For a moment, he did not know what to say. After a long while, Ghostly slowly said, "How did you get acquainted with him?" Little White looked at him with a gentle smile on her face, but her eyes were as clear as water. However, there was a hint of mockery in her eyes as she said, "Don't you know? I'm an old demon. I'm old, so I naturally know more things and know more monsters." Ghostly was silent. Little White looked at him and said, "Then what about you? What are you doing here? You said that the Ghost King ordered that woman to bring you here. What is he up to?" Ghostly shook his head and said, "Ghost King Sect Master did not order me to come here to hunt down the beast god." Little White was stunned and said, "If you're not here to kill him, then why did you come all the way here?" Ghostly said, "He wants me to subdue a strange beast by the beast god's side, Tao Tai, and bring it back to him." "Tao Tai?" Little White was stunned again. She frowned and thought for a moment before muttering to herself, "That's strange. When did he become interested in Tao Tai?" Ghostly said lightly, "I don't know about that. In any case, that's what he ordered. I'll just do as he says." Little White snorted and said, "That Tao Tai is a spiritual beast that never leaves the beast god's side. If you want to subdue it, you must go through the beast god. Do you have the confidence to win against the beast god? Or do you also think that he wants to hit you when you're down after being injured?" Ghostly looked at Little White and didn't say anything. After a moment, he suddenly smiled and walked past Little White, heading deeper into the darkness of the cave. Little White's expression changed slightly as she followed beside him and said, "What do you mean?" Little Gray, who was lying on Ghostly's shoulder, saw that Little White was beside him. With a "hoo" sound, it jumped down from Ghostly's shoulder and landed on Little White's body. Little White caught the monkey and hugged it to her chest. Rubbing its head, she couldn't help but have a bit of affection in her eyes. She then turned to look at Ghostly. Ghostly slowly said, "You know that as long as it's not too excessive, I will do what the Sovereign orders me to do." Little White snorted and said, "Have you ever thought that if you do this yourself, you may feel better in your heart? But the things you have done all these years, I'm afraid that Bai Yao may not like you to do them." Ghostly's footsteps suddenly stopped. His whole body seemed to have stopped. Little White frowned and also stopped, but she didn't look at Ghostly. Instead, she lowered her head and looked at Little Gray, gently stroking its fur. Little Gray's 3 eyes blinked, as if he didn't understand. He looked at Little White for a while, then looked at his master for a while. Ghostly was silent for a while before whispering, "Since you know that doing this will make me feel better, why do you still say that?" Little White sighed and didn't say anything. Ghostly's figure suddenly seemed somewhat lonely. However, he stood in the faint green light and did not turn his head. It was as if he had long been used to it and never turned his head. He was silent for a long time before he finally said, "I have never done anything that offends the heavens and reason." After saying that, he didn't say another word and continued to walk forward. Looking at that figure, Little White was also silent. After a while, she looked at Little Gray in her arms and saw that the monkey's 3 eyes were looking at her. Little White smiled bitterly and said, "That master of yours, he actually didn't go crazy in these 10 years. It's really strange." The 2 figures walked for a long time in the depths of the suppressing devil ancient cave. Ghostly was not in a hurry and Little White seemed to have a lot of thoughts in her mind. She didn't stop Ghostly from looking for the beast deity, nor did she open her mouth to point out the direction. She only walked behind him, deep in thought. Suddenly, Ghostly stopped in his tracks. In front of him, in the darkness, a faint green light suddenly lit up. It flickered continuously and shone several feet above the ground. And all around, it was silent. Not to mention breathing, there wasn't even the stench of those ferocious demonic beasts. At this moment, Little White, who was walking behind him, sighed and said, "We're here. There's a door under the green light in front of us. Past that door is a large stone room. The people and spirit beasts you're looking for are inside." Ghostly didn't say anything, but Little Gray looked at Little White's expression and suddenly jumped up. After a few jumps, he jumped back to Ghostly's shoulder and then turned back to smile at Little White and rubbed his head. Little White also smiled at Little Gray and then said to Ghostly, "Listen to me, I have a good relationship with the beast deity. So if you want me to help you deal with him, I'm afraid it's impossible. Although you haven't fought with him before, I think you should more or less have an idea of his skills. Although he was seriously injured by the Zhu Xian sword, but he is not someone that ordinary cultivators can deal with, so..." She looked at him and slowly said, "Really, it's not too late for you to let go now." Ghostly was silent for a moment, but then he looked at Little White and slowly shook his head. Then he took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Then he walked towards the green light. Looking at his figure, Little White didn't continue to follow. But in her eyes there was a faint trace of hidden bitterness and gentleness. Suddenly, she slightly raised her voice towards Ghostly's figure and said, "Do you still have that mystical fire mirror on you?" Ghostly was startled for a moment and stopped. He turned his head and said, "Yes, what's wrong?" Little White's face seemed a little helpless. She slowly shook her head and said, "Remember, first, the beast deity can be defeated. Second, in a critical moment, you can try using the mystical fire mirror." Ghostly nodded. Although he still didn't understand, he didn't want to ask more and said, "Thank you." After he finished speaking, he continued to turn around and merged into the darkness. In the distance, the monkey Little Gray's soft squeaking sound could be heard. Little White looked at the darkness and stood in the same place. She silently stood there for a long time, as if she was startled, but also as if she was silently waiting for something. Under the green light there was indeed a stone door, but the door had long disappeared. Only the green light could be seen clearly at this moment. It turned out that it was a huge green gem that was inlaid on the stone wall of the stone door. Ghostly didn't stop and walked in. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. A burning brazier was placed alone on the ground in the distance. Around the brazier's flames was darkness, and he couldn't see how big this stone room was. But behind the flames, he could clearly see a man. A man wearing bright silk clothes, sitting on the ground with his back against a small stone table, smiling at him. He was once familiar with that person's face. Beside that man, the evil beast Tautai slowly stood up and roared in a low voice filled with hostility. That man who looked a little coquettish, although his face was tired, there seemed to be a faint smile in his eyes. He smiled at Ghostly, who was standing at the door, and said, "We meet again." Chapter 394. Central Plains, Abandoned Morgue outside Heyang City. This mysterious person broke Tanis Ka's spell with one move, using his unfathomable skills to stun everyone. Even Tanis Ka's special escape skill was seen through by him, and in his speech and actions, this person did not deny the mysterious connection with Qing Yun's sect. In addition to his unfathomable Tai Chi Xian Qing Wei cultivation, this mysterious person's background was unimaginable. However, as the person's dark figure gradually neared, that strange malevolent air shrouded over Tanis Ka, Tawny and Wild Dog Taoist no longer had any spare thoughts to think about these things. After breaking Tanis Ka's spell, that person's body hidden in the shadows seemed to be stimulated, started to pant slowly. His breathing slowly became heavy. Tanis Ka frowned tightly, staring at that figure. There was not much fear in his eyes, instead more puzzlement. Based on the high level of skills that this mysterious person had displayed, it was naturally impossible for him to be out of breath after just a few moves. Obviously, this person's body seemed to have some hidden illness or some strange symptoms that even a person with such a high level of skills like him could not control himself. But even so, from the outside, that mysterious person not only did not show any signs of weakening, on the contrary, as the malevolent air continued to rise, Tai Chi Xian Qing Wei's pure and gentle air subsided, the malevolent air and pressure shrouding over, was not inferior to it. At this moment, anyone who faced that pair of dark red eyes that gradually lit up after the black air, would know what this mysterious person was going to do next. Tanis Ka clenched his teeth, seemed to have made up his mind, suddenly wanted to pull Wild Dog Taoist and Xiao Huan behind him, where he stretched out his hand. Wild Dog Taoist was pulled over, but Xiao Huan pulled empty air. Tanis Ka was surprised. Before he could turn his head to look, a figure flashed past. Xiao Huan was already standing in front of him, facing that mysterious person. Tanis Ka was stunned. Tawny anxiously said, "Grandpa, you all leave quickly, I will block him." Tanis Ka angrily said, "What do you know? This person's cultivation is not a small matter, quickly." Before he said come back, Xiao Huan had already made her move. Facing that mysterious person, this beautiful and pure young lady suddenly raised her hands. A black book with wordless cover faintly flashed past her hands. The next moment, the 7 mysterious blood jade bone pieces that Mr. Ghost gave her, appeared in her hands. A dark aura, invisible yet seemingly tangible, suddenly spread out of thin air and descended upon this abandoned courtyard. Tanis Ka stopped in astonishment. Even the mysterious person who was approaching in front of him let out a soft sound of surprise and stopped. Completely different from that mysterious man's ferocious aura, but also containing the same strange dark aura, gushed over from all directions. This place was originally a morgue. The Yin energy was already extremely heavy. This time Xiao Huan had unleashed her strange ghost way skills. Immediately ghost howls resounded. The Yin wind, miserable, like thousands of ghosts howling, made one's heart congested and flustered. 7 blood jade bone pieces slowly floated up from Tawny's hands, like being controlled by an invisible hand, lined up in a triangle shape in the air before Tawny. On each piece, those blood-stained areas slowly glowed with dark red light, like 7 slowly opened eyes, staring at that mysterious person. In the chilly wind that filled the courtyard, the mysterious man's clothes also fluttered, but he did not seem to be confused by these ghosts and spirits at all. The pair of eyes hidden behind the black shadow slightly narrowed, and suddenly said in a cold voice, "Ghost Dao technique." Tawny frowned slightly. Her beautiful face right now appeared slightly pale, not knowing if it was because it was her first time using this skill and she was not familiar with it, or the girl was naturally repulsed and afraid of ghosts and spirits, but no matter what, the Ghost Way skills that she used for the first time, through the catalysis of the Ghost Way treasure blood jade bone pieces, had already formed. A layer of deep dark energy gradually condensed around Tawny's body, and as Tawny's arm turned, it took shape. A huge black skull that was incompatible with Tawny's appearance, looked extremely strange. The 7 blood jade bone shards also slowly rose into the air, and embedded themselves into the eye sockets of the skeleton formed by the black gas. In an instant, the skeleton seemed to have been reborn. Its eyes shone brightly with a red light. It opened its mouth and let out a breath. A gust of cold wind rose and surged out like thunder. A ray of black gas shot out from its mouth like a sharp arrow towards the mysterious person. The sound of the arrow piercing through the air was like a bird's whistle, and in the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of the mysterious person. The mysterious person's figure turned, and although it seemed slow, he dodged the fierce ghost chi arrow by a hair's breadth. The ghost chi arrow pierced through the air, and the surging sound seemed to still be beside his ears. However, before he could even catch his breath, the black skeleton in front of him actually spat out black and ferocious ghost arrows in succession. The arrows whistled through the air as they shot directly towards the mysterious figure. Moreover, the directions of the arrows were slightly different as well. They shot up, down, left and right, and they actually didn't leave any room for maneuver. Behind Xiao Huan, Zhou Yixian and Wild Dog Taoist's countenance changed. The difference was that Wild Dog Taoist was surprised and delighted. He did not expect Xiao Huan's skills to be so powerful, and Zhou Yixian's expression was much more complicated. There was no joy on his face, more worry and doubt. And at this moment, Zhou Yixian's expression suddenly changed, stepped back, looked towards the other direction of the courtyard. That was not where Xiao Huan and that mysterious person were fighting. On the contrary, what everyone did not notice, they had just investigated a place, the abandoned house of the Mord. The shadows there were deep, but compared to the eerie atmosphere in the courtyard, that place instead seemed better. Just now when Tanis Yixian and Wild Dog Taoist peered in from the doorway, the inside was naturally deserted. There was nothing, only remnants of broken tiles and a few worn-out coffins that made one uncomfortable looking at them. But it was these, suddenly attracted Zhou Yixian's attention. Even Xiao Huan, who was fighting fiercely, for a moment he also did not notice. In that abandoned house, what appeared? Zhou Yixian's eyes stared without blinking. In the courtyard, Xiao Huan's ghost way skills were imposing. For a moment completely overwhelmed that mysterious person. The black skull she summoned kept on shooting fierce ghost arrows, one after another piercing the air, although none of them could hit that mysterious person, but it forced him to keep dodging. This eerie and strange ghost way power, even that mysterious person with unfathomable skills was unwilling to face it head-on. Just that after a long while, although the black skull shrouding Xiao Huan did not disperse, and the red light in its eyes was still as bright, but that mysterious person changed, seemed to have seen something, sneered, suddenly in the sky full of ghost arrows like rain, leapt up, pounced towards Xiao Huan. All the ghost arrows seemed to have lost their aim for a moment and slid past his body. The whistling sounds of the arrows were incessant, but they all flew to the side. Wild Dog Taoist and the rest turned pale. Xiao Huan also turned pale, watching that black figure about to fly near, her hands suddenly clasped together, placed in front of her chest. Immediately under her spell, the black skull with a whistle, suddenly shrunk to about half its size, but at the same time also blocked in front of Xiao Huan. The 7 pieces of blood jade bone shimmering with red light rotated rapidly. In the black skull's eyes, a red light screen instantly sprayed out, intercepting that mysterious person's path. The mysterious man snorted, seemed like even with his skills, he also felt some fear towards this red light screen, forced himself to stopped. Instead Xiao Huan, although temporarily out of danger but immediately after for some reason, her entire body shook, as if her vitality was greatly injured. A streak of blackness flashed across her face. The next moment, the spell in her hands and that black skeleton in front of her, both started to tremble. Even the ghost arrows that she shot out were immediately affected. From the sharp whistling, unstoppable momentum, became weak and powerless, and that red light screen that Xiao Huan cast, finally under Xiao Huan's strenuous expression, gradually trembled and finally dissipated. Unexpectedly, that mysterious person after Xiao Huan's sudden decline, did not attack again, instead stood still, looked at that gradually weakening girl. A cold glint flashed past his eyes. Wild Dog Taoist was anxious. He did not know why Xiao Huan, who looked like she had the upper hand just a moment ago, suddenly seemed to be badly injured and defeated, quickly went up to support Xiao Huan, who was on the verge of collapse. When he touched her, he was immediately shocked, not to mention Xiao Huan's body was extremely cold. In that chill there was even a strange, unfathomable ghost power, evil energy, hissing out, as if it wanted to devour someone. Fortunately this feeling soon dissipated as Xiao Huan sat down powerlessly. Wild Dog Taoist did not dare to be negligent, helped Xiao Huan to sit down slowly. Tanis Isian quietly walked to Xiao Huan, carefully looked at her face, shook his head and sighed, did not speak. Xiao Huan at this moment looked extremely weak. It seemed like she could not even speak. The black skull in the air gradually faded and finally dissipated, leaving behind 7 ordinary blood jade bone pieces, slightly condensed in the air, and then fell down, landing on the stone slab in front of Xiao Huan, making a few clear sounds. That mysterious person looked at Xiao Huan, suddenly said, "This blood soul skill, how long has she trained?" Chapter 395. Tanis Ka slowly walked in front of Tani, blocking his view of Tani. The mysterious man looked at him. Tanis Ka indifferently said, "Only 1 month." The mysterious man was silent for a moment, the 2 red lights in his eyes slowly dimmed down a lot, following the weakening of the red lights. He seemed to look more human, the ferocious air on him also faded a lot. Tanis Ka frowned. He had traveled extensively, not many could be compared with him. Naturally he could see the strangeness of this mysterious man. His eyes gradually revealed a pondering look, and then he seemed to have thought of something, suddenly looked at the direction of the abandoned house. In the cold night wind, the house that had been abandoned for many years stood alone, dilapidated and desolate. There was really nothing special about it, just that Tanis Ka's expression when he looked at it was very strange, indistinctly with some expectation. The mysterious man was silent for a while. His voice was still calm, but when he looked at Zhou Yixin's back, there was already some unexpected praise, said, "Good talent, but it's a pity to use it on the ghost Dao." Tanis Ka turned and looked at him, said, "This honorable sir, we have no intention to offend you, we mistakenly entered this place tonight, there is no other intention, and even more do not want to have any conflict with you. If there's nothing else, please let the 3 of us go." The mysterious man slowly retracted his gaze, looked at Tanis Ka, sneered and said, "Mistakenly entered this place, you all say it so easily, who knows you all are not." Halfway through his sentence, suddenly, that person's body trembled slightly, and actually interrupted his words. Zhou Yixin was startled, and then he clearly saw, on the face that was covered by the black veil, in the eye sockets, 2 spots of red light, slowly lit up again. The ferocious air rose again, invisibly shrouded over, pressuring everything, even more than before. Tanis Ka's countenance changed greatly, abruptly stepped back, pulled up the powerless Tani, hurriedly said to the shocked Wild Dog Taoist, Quickly split up and run, 1 is 1. Wild Dog Taoist also seemed to understand something, but before he could speak, the darkness ahead suddenly congealed, the Yin wind surged, a huge shadow abruptly shrouded down from the sky, completely shrouded the 3 of them. There was no way out. Wild Dog Taoist with a loud roar, pounced forward, pressed Xiao Huan under his body, using his body to block that black shadow. Tanis Isian was stunned. The complicated expression on his old face changed again, but in a flash, that incomparably powerful darkness like the sky curtain fell into the mortal world, the heavy power unstoppable, with a loud rumble, like a 10,000 zhang Mount Tai pressing down, looked like the 3 of them would be crushed into powder. At this critical moment, at the critical moment of life and death, a scarlet light suddenly flashed in that abandoned house, as if someone suddenly roared in the darkness. The light instantly expanded, like the suppressed anger for a long time, in a blink pierced through the darkness, became an incomparably dazzling huge light pillar, forcibly shot out from the dark depths of the abandoned house. What followed was a thunder-like roar, the entire abandoned house in an instant split into pieces by a great force, innumerable debris shot up into the sky with a loud roar, scarlet light dazzled, like a raging fire, a figure transformed into a huge dragon, streaked across the dark void, with a thunderous momentum, shot towards that mysterious man. The strange shadow that was about to crush Tanis Ka, Tawny and Wild Dog Taoist into pieces, suddenly like a whale sucking in water, the enormous pressure suddenly disappeared. Tanis Ka and the rest felt the world spinning, their minds dizzy. In the distance, facing the light figure that shot over, the mysterious figure also seemed to be extremely angry, and the blood-red color in his eyes became even more intense. Suddenly, both of his hands reached out and blocked in front of him, instantly condensing into a black shadow wall, forcefully blocking the blazing scarlet light. However, under the intense battle between the two sides, the area where the scarlet light and the black shadow intersected seemed to have also become white-hot, constantly emitting strange hissing sounds. From afar, the surrounding scenery actually began to vaporize, and surging heat waves began to roll, drifting up bit by bit into the sky. And right now, the figures of the two mysterious figures could not be seen clearly. On such a peaceful night, in such a deserted morgue, there were actually people with such profound cultivation, fighting to the death here. Suddenly, in the deepest part of the light, a loud sound burst out, like a sudden clap of thunder in the horizon. Instantly a huge gust of strong wind hit them, sand billowed all around, all objects were shot out, even Tanis Ka and the rest also involuntarily flipped and floated out. In that clap of thunder, there seemed to be a loud angry roar like thunder. "You still not turning back?" Replying that voice was a sneer, containing endless disdain and arrogance. The light and shadow wavered, and then finally slowly dimmed and dissipated. A huge pit suddenly appeared in the sand. In the pit stood two people facing each other. One was someone Tanis Ka and the rest had never seen before, short and fat, face full of anger, holding a scarlet celestial sword, awe-inspiring, just that not knowing if he was injured. At the corner of this person's mouth, there were traces of blood. And the other person, looking at his attire, it was that mysterious figure they were fighting just now. But right now the layer of black gas that shrouded him had already dissipated, not knowing if it was because the fight with this short and fat person was too intense and could not be maintained. Looking from afar, this mysterious person was wearing Qing Yun sect Taoist robe, but his face was plain, 5 long strands of beard. The first impression he gave was that of a Taoist master, outstanding and extraordinary appearance, just that right now his eyes were glinting with cold light, red light flashing, added some strangeness. That short and fat person glanced at Tanis Ka and the rest, seemed to see that the three of them were temporarily not in danger, then revealed a slightly relieved expression, then his expression turned grim, stared at that Taoist, after a long while, sneered and coldly said, "You think with this executioner heart lock Dao technique you can trap me?" The Taoist's eyes flashed with a red light, and the ferocious aura on his body was extremely strong, almost like a tangible object, constantly expanding and exhaling. He said eerily, "I've forgotten, this Dao technique was originally created by your sect's founder, but it doesn't feel good to use it on you." "Pei," that fat person shouted. "You have fallen into the evil way, still dare to talk nonsense. Executioner Heartlock has long been banned by the generations of founders, now you ignore the teachings. Do you still have Qing Yun sect generations of founders in your eyes?" That Taoist sneered, said, "That day you and I had a great battle, the destruction of Founders' Ancestral Hall, it was not my credit alone. Do you still have Qing Yun sect generations of founders in your eyes?" That fat person choked, but then became even more furious, just that for a moment he did not know what to say, only stared fiercely at that Taoist. That Taoist assessed the fat person a few times, suddenly sneered and said, "I think you better not force yourself, although your cultivation is more profound than I thought, actually able to forcefully break the executioner heartlock prohibition, but in order to save the three of them, you expended your cultivation to forcefully open it. Right now your qi and blood are flowing back, your entire body's energy channels are shaking, at most you only have 60% of your usual cultivation. He coldly sneered, said, "That day when you were at your peak, you were still not my match, captured by me and imprisoned in this abandoned coffin, now you still dare to be my enemy." The fat person did not have the slightest sign of fear or retreat, sternly said, "That year you and Juan's senior brother were peerless talents, sweeping away the evil and demons. After I followed you, even if I died for you, I did not have the slightest regret, but today you are no longer the person of that year, and what I am doing is exactly what you and Juan's senior brother did 9 times without regret." He let out a long howl. His expression was resolute, but there was also deep sorrow. He shouted, "Take my sword!" Before he finished his words, his figure like lightning instantly blended into the scarlet light, like a huge dragon soaring in the sky, pounced over. The red glow in the Taoist's eyes intensified, but his pupils constricted slightly. The scarlet beam of light was so powerful that it seemed to be able to cut through the sky and split the heavens and earth. It was almost unstoppable, and the only path left was to perish together with the enemy. But he suddenly sneered. His right hand waved, suddenly a cold light floated up, not much dazzling light, but it blocked the scarlet light column's path in front of him. And when that cold light and scarlet light column came into contact, suddenly it shone brilliantly. It looked blunt and dull, but it actually cut in. A burst of dazzling light flickered and swayed. The fatty suddenly let out an angry roar, followed by a cry of pain. Immediately, the scarlet light was deflected and dispersed. The fatty staggered and was sent flying. When he landed on the ground, he couldn't stand still and was forced to retreat. As he retreated, he spat out a mouthful of blood. It was obvious that he was heavily injured. Even his clothes and chest area were dyed red with blood. As for the Taoist, a cold glint flashed across his eyes. Looking closely, he was actually holding an ordinary ancient sword in his hand. The ancient sword's shape was simple and crude, and the material was even more strange. It looked like stone, but it wasn't. The strangest thing was that this ancient sword was actually broken. The first 2 feet of the sword was actually broken. Blood flowed out from that fat person's mouth, stared fiercely at that Taoist, hissed, You actually dare to bring Zhu Xian's sword down Qingyun Hill?" That Taoist laughed wildly to the sky, his attitude extremely savage. And far away, Tanis Ka and the rest were more and more shocked, until the end, their minds were a blank. Zhu Xian ancient sword. The broken sword in that Taoist's hand was actually the world-famous celestial number 1 sword Zhu Xian ancient sword? Then what kind of people were these 2 terrifyingly skilled people? Chapter 396. Southern Border, 10,000 Great Mountains. The icy cold Yin wind gradually made people feel the chill, the gloomy black clouds in the sky, and that gradually becoming more and more obvious deep cave, all indicated that the legendary evil demon's cave was gradually nearing. Lu Sueki and the rest stood several zhangs away from the subdued devil ancient cave, gazing towards that cave. Far away, a stone statue with its back facing them, stood alone at the entrance of the subdued devil ancient cave. Other than that, there was nothing else. Li Sun looked at that cave, seemed to be inexplicably nervous, quietly said, "It's here." The chilly wind whistled, and it seemed to have suddenly raised the pitch of the sound, causing people to feel a chill down their spines. Lu Sueki, Xing Shushu, Li Sun and the rest were highly skilled, naturally did not fear the Yin energy contained in the Yin wind, and the dozens of Fenxiang Valley disciples who followed them were all highly skilled, did not look too uncomfortable. Xing Shushu turned back, said, "The evil energy here is indeed extremely heavy, just that we have observed for a long time, but there is not a single evil beast. This is a little strange." Lu Sueki nodded her head, but her cold expression did not change, indifferently said, "Since we are here, let's go over. If there are any evil beasts we can deal with them early." After speaking, without waiting for Li Sun and the rest to reply, she walked straight ahead. Li Sun and Xing Shushu looked at each other. Xing Shushu laughed dryly, shrugged his shoulders and followed. Li Sun looked at that graceful back figure from behind, suddenly sighed to himself. To him, that figure had appeared in his dreams countless times, but when they really had the chance to be together, it seemed to be even further apart. He was silent for a moment, waved his hand, beckoned his junior brothers behind him, and followed. Far away, near that mysterious stone statue at the entrance of the subdued devil ancient cave, a black figure suddenly flashed past, flashed into the cave. It was He Mu's figure. Almost at the same time as He Mu's figure flashed to the cave entrance, a low roar was heard from deep within the cave. It was that fierce black tiger's voice, following which the illusionary mist in the air started to condense. The fierce spirit was about to appear again. At this moment, He Mu, who was hidden behind the black clothes, suddenly said, "Big brother, don't come out first. Listen to me." The ferocious spirit black tiger coldly laughed, but the white fog was still condensing. Evidently, it did not hear He Mu's words and said, "Beast, do you still dare to come back?" He Mu stood in the shadows at the corner of the cave, said, "After you appeared, it was inevitable that you would startle these people who came over. Today there is an endless stream of people coming to this subdued devil cave. Don't tell me you still don't know the reason?" The illusory white smoke suddenly paused in midair. It did not continue to increase, but it did not have the intention of dispersing either. After a moment, Black Tiger's voice said coldly, "What do you mean?" Blackwood said coldly, "They naturally came here to deal with the person in this cave. No matter what, isn't this what you want? What's more, you've already let people in earlier, so why not let more people in now? What's wrong with that?" Outside the cave, the sound of footsteps could be heard from afar. The group of people was approaching this ancient and deep cave. The white fog suddenly dispersed. In the strong wind blowing out from the depths of the cave, it instantly dispersed into nothingness. And almost at the same time, He Mu's black figure also disappeared into the darkness. Lu Sueki, Xing Shushu and Li Sun's figures, the next moment, appeared before the subdued devil cave entrance. Xing Shushu cautiously peered into the deep darkness of the cave. His brows frowned. Evidently he was not at ease with such a strange place with such an evil aura. And Li Sun, who was standing beside him, was similar to him, also frowned slightly. But in his expression, his eyes revealed some indistinct surprise and astonishment. He slowly paced back and forth near the cave entrance, but it was all very calm. Other than the bone-chilling wind, there was no other sound. This seemed to make Li Sun puzzled. He stared at the subdued devil cave in silence, as if deep in thought. Different from the two men, after arriving outside the cave, Lu Sueki very quickly turned her attention from the deep darkness of the subdued devil ancient cave, to the mysterious and lonely female stone statue. She slowly walked to the front of the stone statue, gazed at it. The female statue had experienced countless years of wind, frost, rain and snow. Traces of erosion could be seen from top to bottom. But as if she had some kind of reaction, Lu Sueki could clearly see that the female statue's expression was still that lifelike. Her face was slightly sorrowful, carrying a tinge of sadness. In her eyes there seemed to be perplexity, silently gazing into the depths of this mysterious cave, as if anticipating something, as if pouring out her heart to something? Just that in these thousands of years, who had ever heard her heart's words? "Lu Junior sister, Lu Junior sister." Suddenly, a few surprised cries were heard from the side. Lu Sueki's body shook, involuntarily took a step back, woke up from her baffling contemplation, looked to the side. Xing Shushu's face was a little surprised, and also a little worried, said, "Lu Junior sister, I have called you a few times, why do you seem not to hear me?" Lu Sueki's face turned slightly pale, slowly clenched the hands hanging at her waist, but discovered that since when, her palms were covered in cold sweat. She took a deep breath, calmed herself down, lightly said, "Nothing, did you all discover anything?" Xing Shushu shook his head and said, No, besides the chilly wind that is slightly strange, there isn't even a trace of a demon beast. As he spoke, he turned to Li Sun and said, Senior brother Li, what did you find? Li Sun was silent for a moment, also shook his head, said, Nothing, but this place is really strange. Xing Shushu curiously said, Strange, what strange? Li Sun was surprised, quickly gave a dry laugh, said, Nothing, I am just seeing that this is the lair of the evil beasts. Why are there no evil beasts here, so I find it strange. Xing Shushu smiled, said, That's true, I also find it strange. What do you think, Lu Junior sister? Lu Sweki did not answer immediately, her bright clear eyes slowly glimmered, again glanced at Li Sun. Li Sun for some reason, suddenly coughed, turned to look at the other Fenxiang Valley disciples, said, The few of you come over, don't go too far. Lu Sweki was silent for a moment, and then turned to look at that female statue, said, No matter what, we are already here, there is no reason to give up halfway, let's go in. Xing Shushu nodded, said, That's right. After speaking, he turned to Li Sun and said, Li Senior brother, what do you think? Li Sun was still frowning, as if right now he had some difficult thoughts hanging in his mind, but after a moment he still said, Lu Junior sister is right, let's go in. Xing Shushu turned, said, Since it is so, let's go in. But this place is after all unusual, it is better for us to be careful. How about this, I will lead the way, Lu Junior sister you stay in the middle to provide support, Li Senior brother you stay at the back, the rest of the Fenxiang Valley Senior brothers walk in the middle, what do you think? Li Sun nodded, was about to agree, suddenly Lu Sweki faintly said, That is not appropriate, better change. Xing Shushu and Li Sun were surprised. Xing Shushu said, Lu Junior sister, then what do you mean? Lu Sweki pondered for a moment, said, I will walk in front, Xing Senior brother at the back, the rest and Li Senior brother in the middle. Li Senior brother and the rest are all Fenxiang Valley disciples. In case something happens, at least there will be someone to command and speak. Li Sun's expression changed slightly, as if he wanted to say something, but Xing Shushu already smiled and said, Ah, you're right, why didn't I think of this? Junior sister Lu is right, then it's settled. Li Sun frowned but in the end still kept his mouth shut, did not speak, considered as acquiescence. Lu Sweki looked at him, turned her head and spoke to Xing Shushu. Xing Senior brother, you walk at the back, your vision is better, it is better to look at the overall situation, strategize. Xing Shushu smiled, suddenly at an angle where Li Sun and the rest of the Fenxiang Valley disciples could not see, with his back facing them. He winked at Lu Sweki and then smiled and said, Lu Junior sister don't worry, with me at the back, don't be afraid of any trouble, ha ha ha. Lu Sweki looked deeply at Xing Shushu, suddenly a faint smile appeared on her lips but then it disappeared. Even so, this moment of elegance had already made the hearts of the Fenxiang Valley disciples, who were secretly peeking at her from afar, someone could not help but sigh. Li Sun snorted, his face cold, immediately the strange sounds disappeared without a trace. Lu Sweki's face again turned cold, looked around, said, We are going in. After speaking, she ignored the rest and walked ahead. Xing Shushu turned and smiled at Li Sun, Li Senior brother, let's go too. Li Sun nodded, beckoned to the rest of the Fenxiang Valley disciples and followed. After Li Sun and the rest followed Lu Sweki into that deep darkness, Xing Shushu was still unhurried, surveyed the surrounding scenery for a moment, as if thinking about something. After a while, he then smiled mysteriously, slowly walked into this ancient cave. Deep footsteps reverberated out from the darkness. The entrance of the subdued devil ancient cave once again fell into silence. As the footsteps grew softer and softer, they grew further and further away. When they finally disappeared, a silhouette suddenly flashed in the darkness. He Mu's silhouette slowly walked out from the darkness. He slowly walked up to the female statue and silently looked at it. Behind him, the illusory white mist slowly floated up, condensed. The huge figure of the fierce black tiger also appeared again, but right now he did not seem to immediately hurl malicious words at He Mu. instead turned back to the depths of the cave and stared for a long time, suddenly sneered, said, "These Central Plains people have never stopped scheming against each other, even here they are still fighting incessantly." Chapter 397. Heimu turned around and said indifferently, "The human heart has always been like this. Not to mention them, even you and I, and even the goddess from all those years ago, weren't they the same?" "What?" The black tiger's enormous body suddenly turned around, and because its speed was too fast, it emitted a muffled sound that was like a wild beast's low roar in midair. When one looked at its face again, it was already filled with rage and was extremely savage. It roared, "What did you say? You actually dare to insult the goddess, and it's even in front of the goddess's statue?" In front of this extremely terrifying ferocious spirit, Heimu's body seemed extremely tiny. However, for some unknown reason, even though his face could not be seen clearly, one could hear from his calm tone that he did not have the slightest bit of fear. Instead, there seemed to be a deep tiredness in his voice. "Big brother, if the goddess didn't scheme back then, after so many years, what do you think was able to seal that undying monster in this ancient cave?" The black tiger was obviously stunned, but it obviously didn't want to admit this, and roared, "What nonsense are you talking about? That was all the goddess. Enough!" Suddenly, Heimu acted out of character and actually shouted out, interrupting the ferocious spirit black tiger's word. "Don't keep mentioning Her Majesty and Her Majesty. My reverence towards Her Majesty isn't any less than yours." The black tiger's enormous body stiffened, and a trace of astonishment involuntarily appeared on its face. After a long while, it didn't get angry, and the expression on its face instead calmed down. Looking down at this relative of its from its previous life, it suddenly smiled, and then said indifferently, "What's wrong with you? You've never spoken like this to me in the past?" Heimu laughed coldly as if in self-ridicule, then slowly turned his gaze back to the exquisite statue of the witch goddess, and said slowly, "Yes, I would absolutely not speak like this in the past, but why have I become like this now? I don't even know, so who can tell me?" The black tiger said coldly, "That's your own business, I'm not interested and don't want to know. You just have to tell me one thing." Heimu stared blankly at the exquisite statue and said, "What?" The ferocious black tiger said, "Back then, it was you who betrayed the teachings left behind by Her Majesty. You were treacherous, you secretly helped that evildoer retrieve the 5 sacred weapons of the southern border's 5 tribes and resurrected him. But today, why did you ask me to let him into the cave with the intention of harming him?" Heimu's gaze never left the exquisite stone statue. After a long while, his voice was low and filled with pain. He said, "Her Highness sealed the beast deity, it was wrong. We followed Her Highness, asking for the art of immortality, so we created such a monster, it was also wrong. I thought that the beast deity did not deserve this, but I didn't expect him to vent his anger on the people of the world, causing this catastrophe. I was also wrong." Laughing bitterly, he suddenly turned around and spread his arms. His voice was mournful as he shouted towards the sky, "Wrong! Wrong! Wrong! So we were all wrong." That shout reverberated far away, the mountains responded, just that heaven and earth were indifferent, as if nothing had changed, coldly watching this mortal world. The ferocious spirit black tiger's huge body stood at the side. Looking at Heimu's figure that was suddenly in extreme pain, it also fell silent. It did not say a single word, and only stood silently behind him. In its eyes, a complicated expression flickered faintly. However, there was not the slightest hint of tears. Whether it was him or Heimu, in this desolate world, for thousands of years, both had long lost the right to cry. Lu Sweki, who was walking in the subdued devil-ancient cave, suddenly sensed something, stopped and turned back to look at the path she came from. The path behind her was pitch black and silent. Other than silence, there was no other sound. Just that sudden palpitation reverberated in her heart, unable to calm down for a long time. Li Sun, who was not far behind her, quietly said, Lu Junior sister, what is it, did you discover something? In the darkness, Lu Sweki slowly turned around and looked forward. Over there, it was also pitch-black darkness. She in the darkness was silent for a moment, then quietly said, Nothing, let's continue. In the darkness, she breathed deeply, pulled herself together, walked forward boldly. The darkness quietly dispersed in front of her, because from her hand, the Tianya celestial sword gradually lit up. The gentle light blue light gently enveloped her, looking like a dream. Behind her, not knowing how many people instantly held their breath. Just that beautiful figure, resolutely walked ahead in the darkness, although she looked a little lonely, but there was not the slightest hesitation. This stretch of road, such a life, how should she walk through it? She did not turn back. Deep inside the subdued devil ancient cave, the flame quietly burned in that ancient brazier, just that if one looked carefully, one would discover that under the fire, in the brazier, there was no firewood or lamp oil or anything combustible. This incessantly burning flame seemed to be a rootless fire. The flame flickered in the air, the flame tongue swayed, illuminating the beast deity's face, and also the figure of that gradually approaching man. Ghostly walked to the other end of the fire, his face in the light, slowly appeared, at the same time he saw that familiar face. The beast deity who was still sitting on the ground leaning against that little stone platform smiled, assessed Ghostly from head to toe, said, I knew someone would come sooner or later, but I did not expect you to be the first to arrive here. He paused, smiled and said, Looking at your expression when you saw me just now, you did not seem surprised. Was it that before we met, you already knew my identity? Ghostly slowly shook his head. Facing this young and gentle-looking man, it was really difficult to associate him with the demon beast who brought calamity to the entire world. But this was the truth. I guessed it later, he indifferently replied. The beast deity looked at him, gently said, Oh, I am very interested. How did you guess it? From the rumors about my appearance, or my clothes, or my various actions, you guessed my identity? None of them, Ghostly said. The beast deity seemed interested, said, Oh, then what is it? Ghostly glanced at his side, said, It's him. The beast deity slowly nodded, said, Not bad, this is the best method, it can't be wrong. Beside him, the ferocious beast Tautai growled. The beast deity stretched out his hand, looking from afar. Ghostly could even see that the hand was strangely pale, as if it was not a human hand. That withered hand was like the hand he saw in the 7-mile cave when he saw the great shaman. Just that, after that seemingly powerless hand gently patted a few times, as if comforted, the Tautai calmed down and slowly lay on the ground. At the same time, Xiao Hui, who had been staying on Ghostly's shoulder, slowly slid down, rubbed its head on the ground and looked at Ghostly and the beast deity, as if it did not feel the intense enmity between the two of them as it had expected. It thought for a while and then slowly approached the Tautai. The Tautai clearly also noticed it, turned its head, watched the approaching gray three-eyed monkey. Very quickly, Xiao Hui approached Tautai's side. It grinned and spread out both of its hands. The tail behind it even curled up and swayed once. Following that, it slowly stretched out its hand and touched Tautai's head. Ghostly and the beast deity's gazes were momentarily attracted by Xiao Hui, just that both of them did not speak, only watched quietly. Watching Xiao Hui's movements, Ghostly suddenly felt a jolt. Not so long ago, many years ago, when he was still that ordinary Zhang Xiaofan, on Big Bamboo Valley, Xiao Hui also tried to get close to Tian Bai's big yellow dog like this. The Tautai slowly straightened its body but did not stand up immediately. To it seemed to be perplexed. It turned its head and looked at its master beast deity. Just that the beast deity seemed to be indifferent, did not show any displeasure, and then it turned its head again. Xiao Hui's hand was about to reach its head. From the Tautai's nose and mouth, suddenly a low snort, as if it was trying to show off. Xiao Hui was startled, withdrew its arm, and then discovered that the Tautai did not make any move to attack, only looking at itself with vigilance. Xiao Hui laughed, bounced twice on the ground and suddenly leapt forward fiercely, leapt to the side of Taotai's body. The Taotai was obviously startled. Its body shrank back, but Xiaohui had already slowly touched its head. To it, the Taotai's hideous ferocious head instead seemed to be a very familiar place. The Taotai's bloody mouth made a low grunt, as if grumbling, but after a moment, it slowly again lazily lay down on the ground, pillowed its head on its arm, looked drowsy, and Xiaohui also leaned on its body, from time to time making light laughter, slowly stroking the Taotai's head. Between the two spiritual beasts there seemed to be no barrier. Ghostly and the beast deity's gaze slowly withdrew from them. For a moment both were silent. After an unknown period of time, the beast deity suddenly smiled and said, "Actually, they are instead happier than me, isn't it?" Ghostly did not speak. Chapter 398. All right. The beast deity smiled faintly, turned around, the weariness on his face deepened. "Why are you here? Is it to kill me?" Ghostly shook his head. The beast deity was slightly taken aback, then laughed and said, "I didn't expect there to be someone who doesn't want to kill me, I didn't expect that. These few months, in your human words, I have tormented the world, brought calamity to the common people. I am a person who deserves to die. Why don't you want to kill me?" Ghostly was silent, looked at the beast deity. The beast deity also looked at him. Between the two men, that ball of fire was quietly burning, at the same time reflected in their eyes. "Should I want to kill you? Shouldn't you?" There was a long, long silence. Maybe. Ghostly's face suddenly revealed a complicated expression, some reminiscence, some pain, and also some indistinct bewilderment. Facing this world's most ferocious evildoer, he seemed to be able to completely let go of his heart, completely not that indifferent and autistic self in front of others. If it was 10 years ago, I would definitely wholeheartedly eliminate the evil for the common people, even though I know my strength is not enough. But ultimately I cannot retreat even half a step. But now? The beast deity stared at him, asked, "But?" The confusion on Ghostly's face deepened. He slowly said, "I just suddenly feel, the common people in the world, what does it have to do with me? My lifelong wish was to live a normal life. I don't want to learn Taoism, I don't want to cultivate, I don't even want to be immortal." The expression on the beast deity's face also suddenly changed. His eyes changed from a faint sneer to a solemn, even with some confusion similar to Ghostly's, as if something touched something deep in his heart. He suddenly said, "Then what exactly do you want?" Ghostly smiled indifferently, slowly looked up at the sky, but there was only the deep darkness of this ancient cave, without a trace of light. He said, "I don't know, sometimes I also thought, maybe I can go back to 10 years ago, my days on Big Bamboo Peak? Or perhaps my dream is to simply return to my childhood, when I didn't know anything. But," he laughed bitterly in a low voice and said, "the right and wrong, the gratitude and resentment in between, how can I let go of it?" The beast deity was silent for a moment. "Do you regret it?" Ghostly did not reply immediately. After a while, he looked at the beast deity again, looked at the pair of eyes behind the flames, and shook his head. The beast deity laughed coldly and said, "Based on what you said, half of your life has been filled with frustrations and sorrow, but now that I am asking you, you do not regret it. What do you say?" Ghostly said, "Half my life is full of frustrations, but most of it is not up to me. I wanted to live an ordinary life, but I got involved in the battle between Buddhism and Taoism. I wanted to cultivate in peace, but I became a demon. I wanted to treat people with sincerity, but I didn't expect to plant the wrong kind of love. When I understand who I am with sincerity..." A desolate expression slowly appeared on his face. In the end, he did not continue speaking. After a long while, he said in a low voice, "Regret? How can I regret it? Even if I regret it, what's the use?" The beast deity silently looked at the man standing there. 10 years did not seem to have left many marks on his face. Just that his figure standing there looked so tired. The beast deity could not help but start to imagine that youth 10 years ago, what kind of life did he lead? Between the two men there was silence, as if they had unknowingly fallen into reminiscence of the past. Everyone's life, past events, how many of them are worth recalling? 10 years? 100 years? 1,000 years, or will it eventually be slowly worn away by time, quietly passing away? The beast deity thought silently, the weariness on his face deepened. His eyes slowly shifted to the direction of that ancient cave entrance. Separated by the endless darkness in a faraway place, there was still a figure standing there alone? This kind of life, what kind of life was it? He suddenly asked ghostly, "Tell me, what is the purpose of living? What is the purpose of living?" Ghostly repeated in a low voice. After a long while, he raised his head and said, "I don't know, it's just that in this life, it seems like I have been living for others." The beast deity was taken aback. He muttered to himself, "Living for others, then what about me, who am I living for?" Ghostly was slightly surprised. He clearly did not expect the beast deity to say such words. Then, he frowned, clearly recalling his own words just now. He felt a little surprised. How could he say such things? After composing himself, Ghost Lee's face regained its calmness, as if that flash of weakness just now had disappeared, as if it had never existed in him. He looked deeply at the beast deity and said, "I came here today, not to kill you." The beast deity still seemed a little absent-minded, as if thinking about something. He faintly replied, "Oh, then why did you come here?" Ghostly pointed to the tautai lying on the ground beside him, and said, "I came for it." The beast deity frowned, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes, and the tautai on the ground immediately reacted, instantly widened its bell-like huge eyes, opened its bloody mouth, roared at Ghostly, and slowly stood up, murderous. And the three-eyed monkey Xiao Hui seemed a little puzzled, slowly left the tautai's side, ran back to Ghostly's feet, raised its head and looked at Ghostly, as if it did not understand its master's words, but after a moment it still climbed up Ghostly's shoulder, just that its three eyes kept glancing at the tautai from time to time. The beast deity snorted and said, "That's strange, you came here not to kill me, but for this tautai? What do you want it for?" Ghostly faintly said, "It's not me who wants it, it's someone else who wants it, and for that person, as long as it's not too much, I will help him." The beast deity looked at him for a moment, suddenly laughed, and said, "You owe someone a favor, isn't it?" Ghostly was silent for a moment and said, "I indeed owe someone a favor, a lot, so much that I will not be able to repay it in my lifetime, but this has nothing to do with you." He looked up, his expression solemn, and slowly stepped forward. Watching his figure slowly approaching, the beast deity's pupils seemed to contract slightly. The flames in the brazier reflected on Ghost Lee's face, the dancing light and shadow trembled in the boundary between darkness and light. That man calmly said, "I have no intention to be your enemy, but it seems that this is unavoidable." The beast deity let out a cold laugh and said, "You think with your skills you can defeat me?" Ghostly did not speak, and did not stop. The deep footsteps reverberated in the empty space. There was no wind, but for some reason, the only flame in this huge stone chamber suddenly started to sway, the light gradually intensified. The darkness was like the netherworld, silent and unfathomable, not knowing how many evil spirits and demons were staring at the people in the light from the darkness. Ghostly walked towards the beast deity in the fire. Suddenly, that ball of fire abruptly rose, blossomed with dazzling light. The entire fire volume was several times bigger than when it was burning peacefully. In the raging fire, there seemed to be a sound like a dragon's roar, reverberating far away. Following the dragon's roar, the entire stone chamber seemed to tremble. The dragon's roar grew louder and louder, and the echoes that came from the depths of the darkness did not show any signs of weakening. Instead, it rose higher and higher, almost becoming a sharp whistling sound. In the end, it was as deafening as the roar of mountains and the roar of a tsunami. Ghostly stopped, because that ball of fire had already abruptly soared up from the brazier, blocking in front of him, and in that blazing fire, indistinctly, there seemed to be a pair of ferocious eyes faintly discernible, watching him. The beast deity's figure had already disappeared behind the fire, but his calm voice was still clearly heard from the fire, said, "This is a southern border ancient inheritance formation, called Inferno 8 Fierce Formation. If you can break it and not die, whatever you want to do, I will also follow you." His voice had just landed. Almost at the same time, a roar burst out from the most dazzling part of the fire. That fire trembled violently. The surrounding 5 chi of ground was scorched. One could imagine the degree of heat around the brazier. A strong hot wind blew over from the front. Ghost Li's clothes fluttered backwards, but his expression did not seem to be affected. Even the monkey Xiao Hui on his shoulder stared at the fire with its 3 eyes, without fear or pain. Just that, their expressions were solemn. Anyone knew that this was only the beginning. The first piece of blood-red ferocious deity pattern slowly appeared in the sky above the fire. That savage face and strange posture was exactly the same as the one in Fenxiang Valley Inferno altar. Ghost Li stared at that picture. A complicated expression slowly appeared on his face. Chapter 399. One after another, lit up one after another, the blood-red light gradually joined together at the edge of the fire, forming a circular shape, encircling that ball of fire in the middle. The last blood-red light, when it gathered below the fire, suddenly, the entire red halo instantly shone brightly. The red light rose sharply. Even the fire inside seemed to be suppressed. All of it, an extremely vicious energy, descended into this space. Deep inside that ball of fire, that pair of faintly discernible eyes, also instantly enlarged. Ho! A deafening roar shook the heavens. In an instant, the entire stone chamber began to shake. The blazing flames danced endlessly like a demon, crazily swaying. In the depths of the flames, a ferocious beast covered in raging flames appeared. It roared as it looked at the world with disdain. Crimson Fire Beast. The beast that once guarded the ancient shaman tribe's 8 savage inferno formation in Fenxiang Valley Inferno altar, appeared again, and facing it for the second time, Ghost Li and Xiao Gui could not help but slightly changed countenance. Xiao Hui bared its teeth, crouched on Ghost Li's shoulder, facing that beast, angrily roared. The Crimson Fire Beast's huge body continuously appeared from the 8 savage inferno formation, first its huge head, then its shoulders, front legs, slowly, its body and hind legs also slowly appeared. Following its arrival, the temperature in the entire stone chamber rose even more. Ghost Li's clothes even started to show signs of being burnt yellow. Finally, the last part of the blazing body appeared. The Crimson Fire Beast, this huge monster, was surrounded by raging flames. Standing in front of Ghost Li and Xiao Hui, Ghost Li was only half the height of this ferocious beast's foot. And behind this beast, that strange halo formed by the 8 ferocious deity images, at times bright and at times flickering, followed behind the Crimson Fire Beast. As if a demon was grinning hideously ahead. The ferocious air gushed over from all directions. The familiar feeling seemed to start to boil in his blood again. He even vaguely remembered, the last time at Fenxiang Valley Inferno altar, that tragic battle. Ghost Li did not move. He only stared intently at that arrogant beast before him. The Crimson Fire Beast, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, slowly turned its head. A gush of scorching heat wave surged past. That pair of eyes that seemed to be burning saw Ghost Li and the 3-eyed monkey Xiao Hui on his shoulder. The Crimson Fire Beast's huge head paused for a moment. After a moment, it suddenly let out an earth-shattering roar. That roar was filled with anger, resentment, and a strong desire for revenge. The blazing flames seemed to explode in an instant, turning from scarlet to pure white. Countless flames rose into the air, forming a blazing fireball that spun rapidly. The terrifying head suddenly opened its huge mouth, and with a roar it bit down. Before his head touched the ground, the surrounding ground had already cracked. endless raging flames like the scorching sun descending into the mortal world, howling as they pounced down, instantly drowning Ghost Lee's figure. The flames that erupted in that instant were like the climax of a carnival, blooming brilliantly. And behind the flames, in that pair of tired eyes, there was no trace of sorrow or joy in life. The surroundings were dark and silent. Lu Sweki and the others had been walking in this ancient cave for a long time. Although they had been on high alert along the way, they had not encountered any ambushes after walking for such a long time. In the darkness, the beautiful figure shrouded by the gentle pale blue light, Ainan's cold face gazed out from the darkness, seemed to be even more beautiful. In the contrast of the darkness, there seemed to be an additional trace of mysterious cold aura. Like the legendary black lily that quietly bloomed in the darkness, growing for 1,000 years, blooming only for a moment. She could not get rid of the gazes that looked at her from time to time. However, Lu Sweki did not seem to feel this. Her bright eyes only stared at the front. Although there was only endless darkness there seemed to be something that she hoped to see in the depths of the darkness. She walked forward, never turning back. The darkness quietly retreated in front of her, and then slowly closed up behind her. Such a gentle figure, in the darkness, was so eye-catching that it even covered the light of the people behind her. Looking at it, it seemed like she was walking alone. Suddenly, she stopped in her tracks. The rest behind her also stopped. Li Sun vigilantly looked around, walked up and was about to ask when he was startled. Ainan's face revealed a complicated expression, seemed to be on high alert. And at this moment, the darkness ahead, which had always been silent, suddenly had a change, an indistinct throbbing, as if suddenly appearing in the darkness and then slowly rolling, becoming bigger, stronger in the darkness. Something seemed to be slowly gathering, like whistling, like roaring, but everything was silent. The next moment it came from an unknown place in the distance. An intense tremor accompanied by a deep roar came rumbling from afar. Then, it rapidly grew louder, as if in the depths of this cave, there was an unparalleled giant spirit beast roaring towards the sky. The surrounding quiet darkness, right now like being ignited, started to boil. Deep in the darkness, countless whistling sounds surged over from all directions. For a moment everyone's countenance changed. Li Sun stepped back, swiftly shouted, "Form a circle, be careful and on guard." The Fenxiang Valley members were all experienced veterans, although shocked but not panicked. One by one they huddled together, vigilantly watching ahead. The surrounding stone walls started to tremble, as if there was some kind of huge force slowly spreading out. Even the ground beneath their feet also showed signs of trembling. In the darkness ahead, the strange commotion became even more intense, as if responding to something, whistling something. In this almost earth-shattering situation, Ainan, for some reason, did not retreat half a step. Distancing herself from her comrades who were in formation, she stood alone in front of the darkness, in front of the pale blue light. The darkness seemed to be malevolently facing her, as if to swallow her at any time. Without any warning, a heat wave suddenly rushed out from the depths of the darkness, like a huge wave that could topple mountains and overturn seas, surged in this ancient cave. Ainan's clothes and hair fluttered at the same time, but her figure did not waver at all. The feeling of the heat wave blowing on her face indistinctly carried some craziness. It was even more difficult to imagine, in the depths of this cave, the source of that power, what kind of scene it was now. Ainan did not speak, only in this raging wind, staring at the wildly dancing darkness ahead. The hot wind was raging. She suddenly raised her head. That wind blew on her face like frost, just that in her eyes, there seemed to be an even more fiery gaze, burning deep in her heart. That depths of darkness, that dark distance. She suddenly made a long howl, her figure actually in this earth-shattering and mountain-shaking. The raging hot wind went against the wind and mountain, shot towards the depths of the darkness. Li Sun, Xing Shu and the others behind him were aghast, not understanding. Li Sun was about to call out, but the light blue radiant figure, like an arrow leaving the bow, disappeared into the darkness in the blink of an eye without the slightest hesitation. He was speechless, unable to speak for a long time. Xing Shu slowly walked to his side, patted his shoulder. Li Sun did not turn back to look at him. The heat wave gradually weakened, and the violent shaking in the surroundings gradually stabilized. Everything slowly returned to its original state. If it weren't for the falling rubble, it would almost give people the illusion that this was just a dream in the darkness. Just that beautiful figure who had already disappeared, clearly indicated, in this strange cave, danger lurked everywhere. Li Sun was silent for a moment, calmed himself down, was about to speak. Suddenly a young Funxiang Valley disciple beside him shouted, "Someone, who is it?" Everyone else was shocked and quickly looked forward. Sure enough, they saw a figure flash in the darkness and a person walked out. She had a slender figure and there was a hint of charm to her as she walked. It was a beautiful woman. Everyone was stunned, for a moment thought that Anan had returned. Li Sun almost called out in joy, but when the words were at the tip of his tongue, suddenly, the smile on his face stiffened, slowly turned ashen, hatred in his eyes, at the same time an incredulous sneer, said, "So it is you." That lady heard the voice, also seemed shocked, looked up, her countenance changed again. This lady had delicate features, charming to the bone. It was Jean Pinger. Chapter 400. Just that right now Jean Pinger's expression was extremely tired, as if she had just gone through a great battle, her energy exhausted, but even so, facing these good faction disciples, Jean Pinger still revealed a soul-stirring smile. In the darkness, she looked exceptionally delicate and pitiful. "Naturally it is me, this Funxiang Valley Gongzi. Why, we have only met a few times and you still can't forget me?" Li Sun's face turned red, stepped back, angrily said, "Who can't forget you, you this witch? At that time you harmed my Yanhong junior sister, now I am going to collect the blood debt from you." After speaking, Li Sun waved his hand, his figure like lightning, already swept towards Jean Pinger. Xing Shu frowned behind, wanted to speak but hesitated, and the Funxiang Valley disciples beside him, after hesitating for a moment, with a shout, one after another swarmed up. For a moment the momentum was rather great. Jean Pinger snorted, a mocking look flashed in her eyes. Just that, with so many enemies pouncing on her at the same time, she was also exhausted. Naturally she would not force herself to fight. On her gentle face, a trace of determination suddenly flashed, as if she had made up her mind. At the same time, with a light shout, purple light appeared on the edge of her right hand, her murderous aura surged. Li Sun had fought with Jean Pinger several times, knew this evil faction witch's power, quickly took precautions, at the same time discovered the sound of wind behind him. Many of his junior brothers were swarming up. Li Sun was shocked, quickly shouted to stop. Everyone was stunned. One after another stopped, but in this moment of confusion, suddenly Jean Pinger's purple light exploded, like a ball of purple flame sweeping over. Li Sun, with a loud shout, blocked in front of everyone. The celestial sword in his hand, unsheathed, blocked this purple light. Just that this seemingly powerful spell, after Li Sun blocked it, suddenly frowned, paused for a moment. The expected power was like a piece of thin paper. The seemingly powerful spell instantly dissipated, and behind the purple light, Jean Pinger's figure had already disappeared into the darkness. Li Sun's face was ashen, and he said hatefully, "Cunning witch, we fell into her trap again. Let's chase after her." After speaking, he was the first to give chase. The Funxiang Valley people behind naturally followed his lead. One after another caught up. Xing Shu half opened his mouth, wanted to say something, but seeing the figures flashing past, he shook his head helplessly, sighed, carefully looked around and slowly followed. Li Sun seemed to be extremely resentful towards Jean Pinger, pursued her all the way and refused to relax. Actually, with Jean Pinger's skills, if it was any other time and place, after scheming against Li Sun, to slip away like this, it was not a difficult thing for her. But right now she was extremely unlucky. Firstly, in this ancient cave which seemed to have only one path, there was nowhere to hide. Secondly, not long ago she had just fought with that mysterious lady, the nine-tailed celestial fox Xiao Bai. although she was not injured and took advantage of Xiao Bai and Ghost Li's entanglement to finally escape, but she had also exhausted a large amount of her power by Xiao Bai's strange spell. One must know that Xiao Bai was the Fox Demon clan's ancestor. Her skills were most likely more than 1,000 years. Her skills were high, her evil skills strong. In the entire world she was also a first-class figure. Although Jean Pinger was also an intelligent girl, but she was still at a disadvantage under Xiao Bai's hands. This was actually nothing much. Firstly, it was not a loss of face. Secondly, Jean Pinger was not injured and Xiao Bai also did not have the intention to hurt her, who knew that at this time of weakness she would meet Li Sun and the rest. Li Sun pursued along the way, did not even have a moment to catch his breath. Fenxiang Valley was one of the 3 great good faction sects, and Li Sun was also Fenxiang Valley Master Yun Elan's proudest disciple. His skills were not to be underestimated. Jean Pinger tried to run with all her strength but still could not escape Li Sun's eyes and ears. After a long time, Jean Pinger felt her chest slowly tightening, even her breathing became uneven. Jean Pinger became more and more anxious. Ever since she entered this cave, strange things happened one after another. First was meeting that mysterious girl Xiao Bai, then Ghost Li and that mysterious girl disappeared at the same time. Not long ago, a strange roar and scorching heat wave were heard from deep inside the cave. It seemed to indicate that there were people fighting in the depths of the cave. Jean Pinger pondered a few times but in the end still did not wish to enter rashly. After all, to her, she was not like Ghost Li, who was willing to take such a huge risk. Although her relationship with Ghost King's sect was not shallow, but it was not to the extent that she would risk her life for them. Just that right now there was someone pursuing her bitterly. Jean Pinger dashed all the way, not knowing how far she had flown into the cave. This ancient cave was really terrifyingly deep. It was impossible to tell from the outside, only that the cave did not seem to have a serious incline downwards, not knowing where it actually led to. In the darkness, the sharp sound of the wind was like a knife. Not knowing when it started, the gusts of wind had already disappeared, but Li Sun's voice was still following behind, never disappearing. And at this moment, in the darkness ahead, suddenly a blurry figure flashed. With Jean Pinger's eyesight, immediately saw that it was that girl who made her suffer. It was the 9-tailed celestial fox Xiao Bai. And Xiao Bai, who was quietly standing in the darkness, seemed to have sensed something. Her body lit up with a white gentle light, slowly turned around. "It's you again." Xiao Bai frowned, indifferently said to Jean Pinger. Jean Pinger's path was blocked by her, had no choice but to stop. She had already experienced Xiao Bai's skills, really did not dare to act rashly. Just that right now there was an obstruction in front and a pursuer behind. For the moment her countenance changed. Xiao Bai's face seemed to be preoccupied, glanced at Jean Pinger and did not have the intention to give way, as if unwilling to let her pass, was about to speak. Suddenly she was surprised again, turned back to look and then suddenly sneered, said, "Strange, there are really a lot of people here today." As he spoke, Li Sun's figure swept out from the darkness with a whistling sound. When he saw that there was another beautiful unfamiliar girl in the field, Li Sun was obviously a little wary. He did not immediately attack Jean Pinger, who was standing in front of him, but stood still. Xiao Bai glanced at Li Sun. Suddenly her eyes turned cold, seemed to recognize Li Sun. The next moment, whistling sounds of wind were heard. Figures kept flashing in the darkness behind Li Sun. It was the other Fenxiang Valley disciples who had arrived. Their skills were not as good as Li Sun and their speed was also much slower than him. Xiao Bai's eyes scanned the disciples' faces and clothes, suddenly sneered and said, "Fenxiang Valley people?" Jean Pinger could not help but glance at Xiao Bai, indistinctly heard Xiao Bai's displeasure towards these Fenxiang Valley people, couldn't help but secretly felt happy. And Li Sun, for the moment, could not figure out Xiao Bai, and he was also unwilling to complicate matters at this moment, immediately said in a clear voice, "I am Li Sun, Fenxiang Valley Yun Elan's disciple. I wonder who Miss is?" "We have no intention to offend Miss, just that this girl," he pointed at Jean Pinger, said, She is a sinful and sinful evil sect which, we are just about to get rid of her. If Miss has no other matters, please stand aside, we will be eternally grateful. Xiao Bai snorted. Not only did she not leave, instead slowly walked 2 steps forward, faintly said, I have some matters so I cannot leave. Li Sun's countenance changed. A few of the Fenxiang Valley disciples behind him had already shouted out angrily. Li Sun in a deep voice said, This, miss, by protecting this witch, you are making Fenxiang Valley your enemy, also making the world's good faction your enemy, do you know? Xiao Bai laughed in spite of herself, stretched out her white jade-like palm, gently stroked her hair, sneered and said, Making Fenxiang Valley my enemy? Making the world's good faction your enemy? Ignorant junior, these are all leftovers from your grand aunts thousands of years ago. The Fenxiang Valley disciples burst into an uproar. Anger also flashed past Li Sun's face, just that his composure was after all better than these junior brothers, and for the moment he could not figure out this mysterious girl's identity. Instead he stopped those junior brothers who were about to charge forward, coldly said, This miss has such a big tone, may I ask who are you? Xiao Bai did not answer her, instead looked dazed. After a long while, she seemed to be muttering to herself. Suddenly Thu Puqi, she laughed out for no reason, shook her head, quietly laughed and said, Grandaunt, AI, it's been a long time since I spoke like this, even I can't understand what you are saying, it's really, AI, don't tell me I am really old? Speaking, the smile on her face slowly disappeared. In a daze, looking at her expression, she seemed to be in a trance. Jean Pinger was speechless. For a moment she did not know what this strange girl was thinking, and no matter how good-tempered Li Sun's, he was about to explode from Xiao Bai's anger, angrily said, I am advising you, if you still do not move aside, don't blame us for offending you. After speaking, he sneered twice, said, Just based on your words challenging the world's good faction, I can capture you. You better not be unable to differentiate good from bad. Xiao Bai slowly looked up, looked at Li Sun, looked deeply at him, suddenly said, That young lady. Jean Pinger did not react at first, until Xiao Bai called for the second time. She was stunned, said, You are calling me? Xiao Bai snorted, said, If not you then who should I call? Speaking, she gently waved her hand, took a step forward, stood between Li Sun and Jean Pinger, said, You go, I will block these people for you. Li Sun and the rest immediately changed countenance. Jean Pinger was overjoyed. For a moment she could not believe it, quickly said, Thank you. Thank you, senior. After speaking, fearing that this strange woman would go back on her words, she hurriedly dashed into the darkness ahead. How could Li Sun and the rest let this murderer escape again? They were about to chase after her when a white light flashed. Instantly a light screen had already lit up, blocking in front of Xiao Bai, completely blocking the way. A moment later, Jean Pinger's figure had already disappeared. Li Sun gritted his teeth in anger, turned and angrily said to Xiao Bai, Who exactly are you? Why are you helping that witch? Xiao Bai smiled, as if Li Sun's anger to her made her even happier, leisurely said, Me? Who I am is none of your business. As for why I want to help her, not for any other reason, just because I find you Fenxiang Valley people an eyesore. Li Sun and the rest of the Fenxiang Valley disciples behind him were stunned. For a moment speechless, Li Sun could not help but ask, This lady, don't tell me we have met before, or have we ever offended you? Xiao Bai shook her head and rolled her eyes slightly. Her eyes were rippling like water and a faint seductive smile hung on the corner of her mouth. She said, We have never seen each other and you have never offended me. But I. She smiled and seemed to be very happy as she said, We have never seen each other before. But I just find Fenxiang Valley an eyesore. What can you do to me? Li Sun and the rest were so infuriated that the roots of their teeth were itching. Without waiting for Li Sun's order, Fenxiang Valley disciples had already pounced forward with angry bellows. Li Sun also did not stop them. This girl had insulted and provoked. If he still did not teach her a lesson, Fenxiang Valley would not have any face in the future. In the darkness, several figures, one after another, leapt out from the darkness, towards that white light screen, and behind the light screen, Xiao Bai's smile was still there, just that in her eyes, there were more traces of mockery. The wind, accompanied by the swiftly passing figures, turned into sharp whistles, whistling incessantly beside her ears, not knowing how much distance, disappeared under her feet. Lu Sueki flew in this ancient dark cave, heading towards that unknown mystery ahead. For some reason, she clearly did not know what was waiting for her ahead, but in her heart there was a fanatical emotion burning fiercely in her frost-like heart like the most fervent flame. And so she flew, disregarding everything else. The figures behind her had already disappeared. When she passed by a place just now, she almost subconsciously felt that there seemed to be a figure hidden in the darkness. However, this feeling disappeared in the blink of an eye. In that split second, the figure in the darkness seemed to have some unusual movement. Then, as if it had discovered something, it actually disappeared again. Far behind him, amidst the whistling wind, was there a soft sigh. Lu Sueki did not know. She did not take this feeling to heart at all. This kind of life, how many things or people would be worth it for you to disregard everything? If there wasn't, maybe it was sorrow? If there was, then disregard everything. Tianya's celestial sword in her hand gave out more and more intense light, like the most surging tide, flashing with a loud bang. That blue figure flew further and further but also seemed nearer and nearer. The wind was still howling, the road ahead was still dark, just that, eventually there would still be someone at the end of this road. She sped, sped, sped. That beam of green light slowly lit up ahead. Lu Sueki finally saw the first beam of light in the darkness, far away in the darkness, like a lonely spirit softly pacing back and forth. She suddenly stopped. In that instant, Tianya's celestial sword's light all retracted, like a woman quietly hiding her fear. The darkness slowly surged up, swallowing her figure, concealing it. She in the darkness quietly watched that green light. Behind that green light, what would be waiting for her? Disappointment or him? If it was him, so what? She actually hesitated and hesitated, that burning fervor in her heart like a flame, still burning and never disappeared, just that deep in that flame, there was a faint sorrow. She stared for a long, long time, slowly moved her feet, stepped back. Was it fear? Was it retreat? In this life, is there anyone that you cannot face? Unable or dare not? Slowly, there was a suffocating feeling, the darkness sinisterly laughed around. Who was ahead? Fate had never smiled, who could so easily defeat themselves, never feared life and death, never feared time, but who could completely face the deepest heart? In the darkness, silence. She seemed to want to retreat again. Not being able to see her face, what kind of pain was it? Suddenly, that blazing heat wave suddenly appeared. Behind that green light, a deafening roar was heard. Scarlet flame, like a malevolent murderer, savagely laughing in this world. The roar intimidated all living things in the world. The ground below and the surrounding rock walls once again started to shake, probably because of the proximity. The shaking became even more violent. It was unimaginable. In the depths of that flame, what kind of scene would it be? The firelight reflected far away. The pair of eyes suddenly brightened in the darkness. What was burning seemed to be the eyes. Light blue light suddenly flashed again, burst out from the darkness. In the rolling heat wave, that beautiful figure stood facing the wind, her beautiful hair dancing. Boom! The deafening roar and the tremors of the earth like Thor made the mortals terrified. The entire cave seemed to be shaking. Numerous stones fell like rain around her. Just that figure had already disappeared. She flew, in that doomsday-like scene, in the increasingly frantic falling stones, flew, towards the depths of the flame, the brightest place, flew. No one knew what was ahead. But who cared? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.